Ladies and gentlemen, please be standing for the Lord Mayor.
There's somebody behind me. Please be seated. Okay, let's get started. Oh, kind of. Just check those. Well, welcome to everybody to this meeting of the City Council. Welcome to everyone watching online. I think it's another important milestone in our calendar and very important for democracy. So I'll ask Mr. Softly to read out the apologies we've received.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. We've had apologies from councillors Bell, Cairns, Cott, Greenhoff, Hindmarsh, Joanne, Lowson, Phillipson, Serthian, Shatwell, Stevenson, Stoker-Walker and Margaret Wood.
Are there any others? Councillor Taylor? Karen Robinson. Okay. Any further apologies? Right. Okay. Thank you. Councillor Ashby. Got that. Right. So does Council agree the minutes of the meeting held on the 24th of January 24?
Lord Mayor, can I make a mention from the last minutes?
Yeah.
Thank you. I did bring a motion to Council about closure of pharmacies and shortages of medication, and many members here spoke. And I am very pleased to inform Council that this issue has now been put on the agenda for the next interim care board. So we will have some success there, I hope.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Councillor Haddad. Now then, just to remind members in terms of official announcement, because tonight's council meeting will determine the council's budget, I would like to remind members that the guillotine will fall at 9 p.m. rather than 8:30 p.m. And, okay, thank you. And the holy month of Ramadan begins from next week, when Muslims around the world will be observing a fast from dawn to sunset, and fasting is one of the 5 pillars of Islam. And there are a number of Muslim councillors and Muslim staff working for the council who will be observing this fast, and I would like to wish all of them and all of Newcastle's and Muslims throughout the world Ramadan Kareem, which apparently means Happy Ramadan. And as this is the last business meeting of the council before the local elections on the 2nd of May, I want to take this opportunity to thank all members for their service over the last few years, especially those members who may be standing down. Right, we're moving on to agenda item 4, and you will be very pleased that there is no correspondence for this meeting. And I'm sure, equally, agenda item 5, petitions, there are no petitions for this meeting. But in terms of public questions and addresses, now 4 requests to attend the council, to address council, have been received. As members are aware, and this is in the standing orders, continuous period of 15 minutes is available for public questions and addresses. So any questions which are not heard this evening will receive a written response. So I'm going to call the first question, which is a public question or address, which is from Sally Watson. So could I have Sally Watson to address Council?
Thank you for allowing me the opportunity to speak. The negative impacts of traffic disproportionately affect children, especially those in the most deprived wards in our city. In Newcastle, between 2017 and 2021, 261 children were injured on our streets. On average, this translates as more than one child every week. Traffic also negatively impacts children's health, and a 2022 study into air pollution outside the city's schools highlighted the urgent need to protect children from vehicle pollution. In 2019, the city's Director of Public Health also reported that there was irrefutable evidence that driving was negatively impacting children's health and exacerbating the impact of austerity. Numerous academic studies demonstrate that to reduce traffic and, relatedly, the impact of traffic on children, we must make it easier to walk, cycle and to use public transport and less easy to drive. Here in Newcastle, Labour's Cabinet Member for Transport stated in 2021 that we want Newcastle to be a safe, clean and green city, where people feel safe to travel around, including protecting our more vulnerable road users, such as people on foot or on bikes. In June 2021, the Cabinet approved a plan for safe walking and cycling routes to connect schools to parks to local shopping centres, endorsing a programme of low-traffic neighbourhoods, or LTNs as they are known, school streets and play streets. These measures also feature in Transport North East's active travel strategy. In addition, North East councils have committed through Transport North East to a target of no more deaths or serious injuries on the region's roads by 2025. There is plenty of evidence that the policies adopted by Newcastle City Council and Transport North East work. However, the council now seems hesitant about implementing them. Transport for London and academic researchers have found that LTNs reduce traffic and road danger on residential streets, enable more active travel and improve people's quality of life while having little impact on boundary roads. The Council's recent report on the Jesmond LTN produced similar data, meeting all of the scheme's objectives. Despite this, it has been removed, along with a similar scheme in Fenham, putting children at risk in these places. Furthermore, it puts future funding at risk. Government body Active Travel England now rates authorities in terms of leadership, plans and track record of delivery and allocates more funding to high-scoring authorities. The implications of having almost nothing to show for the £3.4 million of Transforming Cities funding committed by Transport North East for the city's LTN programme are not referenced in the report on the Jesmond LTN's removal. An impact assessment for the first phase of low-traffic neighbourhood measures, the Safe Newcastle Bridges scheme, stated that the scheme was considered to have benefited children. No such impact assessment has been carried out for the Fenham or Jesmond LTNs. Recent academic research into school streets shows that they reduce air pollution and road danger. In March 2021, the Council launched a school streets programme to initially include up to 11 schools. Northumbria Police's road safety team welcomed the announcement, stating that we receive a significant number of calls about motorists putting the lives of young people at risk at school opening and closing times. After implementing 4 school streets, the scheme appears to have been abandoned with no further updates on the Council's website. There is also strong academic evidence that play streets have multiple health and social benefits and contribute to building stronger communities. Neighbouring North Tyneside has one of the largest play street schemes in the country, with community group Playmeet Street having supported around 70 streets over the last 4 years. However, Newcastle is yet to launch a play street scheme, with their website stating that play streets are currently paused. Newcastle is currently consulting residents on a new local plan and movement strategy, outlining the importance of designing for active travel and integrating sustainable transport options into people's everyday lives. So goes on the seemingly endless cycle of asking people what they want, designing schemes based on this, and failing to deliver or removing schemes when a small but vocal car lobby does not like them. On the 20th of April this year, families across the city will join a critical mass cycle ride, part of a national campaign calling for safer streets now. We need city leaders to spend precious public money wisely based on solid evidence of what works and to make difficult decisions which go beyond just listening. And this is necessary because our children and young people here in Newcastle matter. We call on the Council to do more for children who live in our city now while they are still children. Specifically, we would like to know when the revised low traffic schemes for Fenham and Jesmond will be installed, when the already funded Ousburn, Moorfield, Arthurs Hill and Kenton low traffic schemes will be installed, when the cycle lanes in Heaton and Elsick will be completed. These could eventually serve in the region of 15 primary schools, 3 large secondary schools and a further education college. When the School Streets programme will be resumed and which schools will be included in this. And last but not least, 3 years after it was first announced, when the city's Play Street scheme will be restarted. We ask that the Council sets a clear timetable for these urgently needed changes to our streets. Thank you.
Well timed, Ms Watson. Councillor Williams, and I assume you're just going to stay there?
I might as well. Lord Mayor.
Yes. Councillor Williams to respond.
With regard to Fenham, since the end of the trial, we've already made some improvements. We've narrowed the junctions of Nunsmore Road with Bolbeck Road and Gowland Avenue with Hadrian Road to reduce the distance for pedestrians to cross the road. We've also changed the timings of the traffic signals at the Nunsmore Road junction with Wingrove Road to give more priority to pedestrians. We've also started consultation on a traffic calming scheme for Wingrove Road and a pedestrian safety scheme on Hadrian Road in the vicinity of the primary school. We're also looking to install some yellow lines at several junctions around Dame Allen's School to prevent indiscriminate parking, including on the footways. The Council remains committed to improving the way people move around our whole city and making streetscapes, infrastructure and connectivity to public transport work better for everyone, whilst reducing the impact of transport on the environment. We know that reducing the volume of traffic through local streets is an important part in achieving this, and our Neighbourhood Low Traffic Zones programme was an important way for us to trial changes in our city and learn from them. Data will be an important part of this. Whilst we have collected data in autumn from the streets around Fenham, we're just starting to collect this data in Jesmond. This is to help us understand not only the speed and volume of the traffic, but also the routes that drivers are taking to travel in and through the neighbourhood. We will share this information with you to help tackle issues you face on your local streets. We're about to start the conversation in both areas and are keen to see what works and what doesn't work. We value public engagement and will keep the community informed about any proposals we are considering. We've also undertaken pre-consultation with residents regarding interventions in Arthurs Hill and West Fenham, with proposals including pedestrian crossings being developed. The active travel schemes in both Heaton and Elsick are in the early design stages and will be undertaking the relevant engagement and consultation with all stakeholders, including residents and Active Travel England, to ensure that the schemes we introduce meet the needs of those that are most impacted and to inform them of our programme. We are still continuing with the School Streets programme. We have made 2 school streets at Hotspur and at Grange First School permanent and are evaluating the other schemes at Ravenswood and Chillingham Primary School. We, along with Sustrans, continue to engage with schools on how we can help pupils travelling to their school enjoy safer and healthier journeys, with proposals currently being considered for 2 further school streets. We are also looking how to improve the environment pupils experience when using active travel to get to their school, and if this can be improved through better pedestrian crossing facilities. I trust this gives you some assurance that we are committed to engaging and
expired your time, Councillor Williams. Could you make sure that Ms Watson receives the rest of your reply? Ms Watson, you have another 1 minute to reply.
Thank you for that response. I think I would just like to say that there's a lot of talk about collecting more data, talking to more people, and really just to reiterate the point that as that happens, many years pass, and people have been consulted on changes in some of these neighbourhoods for over a decade. My son is 16 now. The primary school that he went to, Strands consulted with children there 11 years ago about changing the environment outside of that school, and that is still, nothing has happened. He will be an adult and very few changes will have been made that affect him. He is one of, you know, we're talking tens of thousands of children in the city, and pedestrian crossings are not really necessarily reducing traffic danger. But thank you.
Thank you, Ms Watson. Can I invite Dr Heather Lambert to address Council? Thank you.
Thank you, Lord Mayor and Council. Our children are our future. I would like you all to pause and think, what kind of environment do we want our children to grow up in? Our youngest and most vulnerable do not have the environment they deserve and that they need in order to thrive. Children don't have a vote, and they have little, if any, voice that is noticed or heard. This is why children need people like you and me to make the right decisions that put their best interests first. I'm here as a local resident and a voter, a mother and a children's doctor working for Ride for Their Lives and other organisations to demand every child has a right to breathe clean air. I'm here to advocate for children. Cities like Newcastle are focal points of air pollution. Schools and the routes to and from them are often located in areas of high pollution. Many children live within walking, scooting and cycling distance of their schools, but they're not allowed to do so because of parental concerns about the dangers from motor vehicle traffic. In response, parents then actually become part of the problem by driving their kids to school, which not only contributes to air pollution, but sets an example to children that driving really short distances is somehow normal and good. There is reliable scientific evidence that air pollution directly harms children's health. Children are particularly vulnerable because they breathe faster and their bodies are still developing. The damage to health can continue throughout their lives by increasing chest infections, asthma, hospital admissions, and affecting lung development, which increases the likelihood of adult chronic lung disease, which itself places a huge burden, not just on the NHS, but on local providers of health and social care. Thus, implementing strategies now for reducing children's exposure to air pollution would positively impact not only their lives, but their future lives. About a third of childhood asthma can be attributed to air pollution, and the UK has one of the worst records in Europe for deaths and serious illness from asthma. Damage from air pollution starts early, with toxic particles we breathe getting into the bloodstream, crossing the placenta, and even getting into the unborn child. Damage is not limited to lungs, but includes heart, brain, high blood pressure, obesity, mental health, concentration, and affects children's ability to learn. Really urgent action is needed. The major cause of air pollution is burning fossil fuels. Motor vehicles cause air pollution, and we actually need fewer cars on the road and to improve other ways of getting around, active travel for short journeys and public transport for long. Doing nothing is really not an option. Better air is within our reach, and Newcastle Council has a critical opportunity and, I would say, a responsibility to create a safer and healthier environment for our children in order to improve their health. But this actually requires action now, not just words. Other cities like London have introduced various schemes to improve air quality, many of which have been highly controversial, but they have persisted and acted on their commitment to do what is right. They've actually seen air quality improve, and they've already seen reduced rates of asthma. So given the impact on children's health, I find it really difficult to understand why the important trial measures like the Jesmond Low Traffic Neighbourhood was not permitted to run its full 18-month planned course through to September, when, in terms of its stated aims, it was a success in that more people walked and cycled. The co-benefits of walking and cycling are huge in terms of well-being, promoting good mental and physical health, and prevention of things like obesity and diabetes. So, my questions. A month has gone by since the bollards were ripped out of Jesmond, only days after the surprise decision, which appears to have been taken based on seriously flawed consultation, which allowed multiple anonymous responses, thousands of like and dislike clicks, and seemed to respond to those who shout is loudest. What is the Council actually doing now? And can the council ensure that a genuine conversation takes place with local people and it takes expert advice from people who know about the impacts on children, who have no consultation voice themselves? Having withdrawn multiple schemes and seemingly stalling on others like school streets that are running very slowly, can the council tell us what they're actually doing now with some speed to improve air quality? Please don't wait for more children and families to suffer. Around Europe, there are several litigation cases accusing governments of failing to act to protect health, and at least one of these is directed at the UK government. Do we want to see such legal challenges being directed at councils for failing to do their duty and failing to protect the health of its children? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Dr Lambert. Councillor Williams.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. We're pleased to have the opportunity to provide an update following the removal of the experimental traffic restrictions in Jesmond early last month and to set out our next steps. When we made the decision to remove the scheme, we set out our obligation to talking and working together with residents, businesses and other interested user groups to develop and engage on a new range of proposals. The Council remains committed to improving the way people move around our whole city and making streetscapes, infrastructure and connectivity to public transport work better for everyone, whilst reducing the impact of transport on the environment. We know that reducing the volume of traffic through local streets is an important part of achieving this, and our Neighbourhood Low Traffic Zones programme was an important way for us to trial changes in our city and learn from them. There are many different views to consider, so we want to work with you and design the best schemes possible. We continue to receive concerns regarding traffic levels and speeds on residential streets, which new proposals will need to address. Data will be an important part of this. You may have seen traffic survey equipment being installed at several locations throughout the area. This is to help us understand not only the speed and volume of traffic, but also the routes that drivers are taking to travel in and through the neighbourhood. We will share this information with you to help tackle the issues you face on your local streets. This is only the start of the process. These conversations will be ongoing over the coming months as we develop proposals based on views and feedback. As a starting point, we are asking residents what they believe are the traffic issues in their area, what works and what doesn't, and what are the obstacles to moving around in Jesmond. This information will be collated alongside the data we collect and shared with residents in early summer when we will hold public engagement events.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Williams. Dr Lambert, you have another minute to respond.
Thank you for explaining that. On behalf of children, I would, however, request injecting some urgency to action. There has, as our previous speaker said, for many years been a lot of talk and very little in the way of action. We know what the problem is. We need action to do something about it. I'll leave you with a final thought. Over the past 9 minutes, what's everybody in this room been doing? Possibly wondering what's for tea. But no, what you've all been doing is you've all been breathing. You don't think about it. You don't choose to do it. You have to do it all of the time. So what could be more important than making sure that the air that we breathe, and more importantly that our children breathe, is actually clean? We need action now. We need something to actually change what is happening rather than really good words, although I appreciate those. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr Watson. Sorry, Dr Lambert, beg your pardon. Sorry, I was just totalling up the time we've spent so far. Thank you very much, Councillor Williams. Now then, I make it that we've fulfilled the requirements of the standing order. That means that the questions from Alistair Ford and Brian Moore will receive written replies. And we'll move on to agenda item 7, which is the medium-term financial plan for 24-25 to 26-27. And I call on Councillor Frew to move the report, to be seconded by Councillor Kemp.
This chamber needs to act urgently
Councillor Frew, I think you are going to move the motion on the budget, agenda item 7, and your full 20 minutes to speak, up to 20 minutes, and the seconder has up to 5 minutes but can reserve the right. So if you would like to start, Councillor Frew.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. You could have left the timer running while we're out. So apparently some other budget has been going on today. It can't have been that important. But today we heard from the Chancellor a desperate plea for votes, a desperate plea for forgiveness of 14 years of failure, a budget cobbled together from decisions not in the interest of the country, not for the health of the economy, and not for the quality of our public services, but in the interests of the Conservative Party, a naive attempt at a bribe on the eve of an election. Jeremy Hunt visited the North East last month. I'm not going to call him a liar, although I could call him worse, by accident, of course. And when asked about the fairness of local government funding, he said, quote, "We use the council tax system to redistribute a lot of revenue from the south to the north," end quote. But I'm not sure if he listens to his boss. Rishi Sunak, on his failed leadership bid, told the people in Royal Tunbridge Wells quite a different story. He said, quote, "We inherited a bunch of formulas from Labour that shoved all the funding into deprived urban areas, and that needed to be undone. I started the work of undoing that." Sorry, I can't quite get the nasally tone of his voice. So it takes some cheek for the Chancellor to make claims about regional equality, given that's what his party really think. We're still waiting for the government to get serious about levelling up in the North East, and what has been achieved has been in spite of this government. The Chancellor has also decided upon productivity plans across government. For local government, no doubt what this will mean is that DLUC will continue to do what they do best, which is wag their finger at hard-working councils from their Whitehall ivory tower. If the Chancellor wants to get rid of paperwork and bureaucracy, then stop wasting our time with these bidding contests, fund local government properly. If he wants local government to be more productive, then stop undercutting us with these one-year settlements, with this short-term funding. Give us stable finances and investment to achieve productivity improvements. In Newcastle, we have a good record of delivering to tight budgets and thinking ahead about how our services are delivered. That's what the work streams which I presented to Cabinet earlier in the municipal year were all about. We managed to achieve half of the savings that we needed for this budget through that process. Local authorities are engaged in a constant battle for resources because of a broken funding regime. We have seen more councils fail in the past 18 months than in the past 13 years. So how does a Section 114 notice happen? Well, at first, gradually, as cuts and cuts and cuts have been imposed on local governments, and then very suddenly, when all of that breaks down, say when a CQC report means that you have to implement a massive plan to turn things around, or you have problems that have been left in the background for years. Thankfully, we do not have these issues in Newcastle. We have been prudent across the years and made the savings that we have needed to. So what is driving the choices that we have tonight in this council's budget? Well, the main thing is the increasing costs of delivery. In Newcastle, for next year, we estimate we need another £20 million in adult social care and £30 million for children's. These are not costs that we can immediately control. These are contracted commission services in a sector where there are private companies making profit off of local government finances. And the short-termism of the Tory government and their funding regime has crippled investment in local government into the longer-term decisions that we need and the work that we need to do to make our budget sustainable. Despite these challenges, and despite the beauty pageants that the government have set up, we've been extremely successful in achieving those. The Tyne Bridge. It is outrageous that we have had to fight so long and so hard for this funding. It should not take the leader of the council bashing down the door of number 10 Downing Street to get the funding that we need to look after not just a symbol of Tyneside but a national icon. From the Levelling Up Fund, we've secured investment in the Granger Market, one of our greatest and most unique assets in the city. The River Tyne Restoration Facility is a key part of unlocking the potential of industry on the Tyne, and we have a proud history of leading the world in manufacturing from Tyneside. We have the chance to do this again. We have the chance to do this again by investing in the green economy. And in fact, we are already succeeding where businesses are pushing the boundaries, for instance, on hydrogen power in my own ward. We also have investment for the Outer West Leisure Centre, which will provide modern facilities for communities in the Outer West of the city. The trailblazer status that the Chancellor announced today, we knew this was coming because we'd been lobbying for this quite hard, will also improve all of these efforts and boost the work that we have achieved so far. Nick, as the leader, has been instrumental in making this status happen. We've also been very successful in delivering public sector decarbonisation schemes. We are preparing our second round, £26 million of investment. This is up against the unrealistic timescales that the department has set and the challenges in the supply chain that we've had in the past couple of years. We've been hugely ambitious in the improving of fabric and the heating of schools, community centres, libraries and other public buildings for years to come. We've also invested in and secured this funding for our high streets, not just in the city centre, but in the east, and we've delivered on Ridley Place, and Northumberland Street is to follow. Last year, we focused strongly on our response to the cost of living crisis. Our work has been nationally recognised, from our network of wellbeing hubs through to all of our other support for those in need. We have not lost sight of this in Newcastle, as the crisis has clearly not abated. It is a relief to hear today that the Household Support Fund has been extended for 6 months, although it falls short of Newcastle Labour's ask to make this resource permanent because of the valuable work that has been achieved through it. In the last round, we fed nearly 17,000 children during school holidays. We provided cost of living payments to those who were missed out by national schemes. And we gave £200 cash payments to households in immediate crisis to help them get back on their feet. We've also committed in this budget to freeze the price of paid school meals, continue to expand our council tax discounts, and continue to support people through advice services which achieve £1 million of benefits which were unclaimed, £1 million per advisor per year being put in the pockets of our residents. I'm also very proud of our accreditation as a Living Wage Council and the launch of our campaign with Partners for a Living Wage City. The principle is simple. Work should pay enough to get by. Either you believe in this or you don't. I'll come to the amendments later. This has been widely commended by our partners in the Action Group, by trade unions, by the voluntary sector, and in the private sector. It's a shame the opposition don't seem to share this commitment. I'm also glad to hear that Northumberland have made some commitments to the real living wage and offer a genuine hand of friendship to those trying to realise those ambitions. We're already delivering over 5,000 pay rises across the city through the Living Wage City campaign. I invite everyone to St James Park, 10 o'clock on the 21st of March, for the launch of our action plan, where our ambition is to add another 2,500 to that number, to double the number of accredited organisations and more. The Labour administration also has great ambition to deliver good quality social housing for our tenants, and the housing review is an enormous step towards that, and we aim to deliver this year. Oddly, during this process, Councillor Huddart asked the Cabinet whether we had considered simply giving away the housing stock. Simply put, no. Simply put, no. We believe in social housing, and the Liberal Democrats seem to have questions about whether they do. Now, as part of the housing review, we have to be honest and freely admit that there is significant room for improvements. Improvements in our contact centre and improvement in the delivery of repairs. We've already started the work on this in advance of the legal transfer, and I am confident that tenants will soon begin to notice a difference. So what difficult choices do we face in this budget? Savings have to be found. There is no running away from this. After 14 years of austerity, there is no low-hanging fruit left. Under Labour, Newcastle City Council has achieved savings consistently in the face of the funding challenges that we have suffered. We are 27.3% worse off in spending power than we were in 2010. However, we are in much better position than other comparable local authorities, and I intend to ensure that we maintain the sustainability of this Council's finances. Our budget is designed to protect essential services, minimise redundancies, and maintain our commitments to our workforce, and protect the essential advice and support services for most vulnerable people in our city, and to ensure that in the future we do not have the creeping problems that other local authorities have experienced. We've listened carefully to the consultation responses. These responses have been broad and some very focused on specific proposals. In particular, I welcome the support of the North East Chamber of Commerce, who commented that they are supportive of our commitment to the real living wage and a high level of basic services. We recognise the challenges that savings on post-16 cent transport will cause, and that is why we have a phased approach and are looking at a variety of models other local authorities have developed to find the fairest and best suited to Newcastle. Just to remind everybody that this is something that many other local authorities have had to already cut, and we've done very well to maintain it up to this point. However, with the broken funding settlements that we have, something has to give. On the contract for temporary accommodation specifically, the aim of the administration remains to provide a service that helps people with difficulties back on their feet and into independent living. In recognition of the concerns raised by providers, we have removed the savings target from the 24-25 budget. The focus on the number has been a distraction, and we hope for a more constructive and meaningful conversation going forward, as we've already given 6 months more for the review to be conducted. The review should go ahead, as any of our services should be periodically checked and challenged and remodelled. The opposition claim that there are other services that need to be reviewing, and I'll be very interested to hear what their thoughts are, given that they haven't put any of this to paper. At the end of the day, much of this work is about a contractual negotiation with external providers, and officers will seek best value for the council in any event. This is the expectation that any commercial relationship with the council should have when handling taxpayers' money. Although I want to make some points very clear, But this proposal does not change our statutory duties. We are fully committed to supporting the most vulnerable and providing accommodation where necessary. We currently go far above our statutory obligations. This contract is only one part of a picture. Some of the most effective work to prevent homelessness happens in our own housing offer, in the Housing Advice Centre and in active inclusion. These contracts haven't been reviewed for years, and times have moved on, needs have changed, and it's only proper that these arrangements are reviewed. Rough sleeping today in Newcastle has little to do with availability of accommodation. In Q2 of this year, 173 people were found sleeping rough, 79 of whom had an accommodation offer in Newcastle or elsewhere. 47 had refused accommodation or even to discuss it, and 0 are on the street because no offer was made. Half of people found on the street have no local connection to Newcastle. Our city cannot be treated as a destination for homelessness or street begging. And to quote a very productive conversation that I've had with providers, who would be against a review? So this brings me to the amendments from the opposition. There aren't many, and I can sympathise with that. It's been an extremely challenging year for the authority. Firstly, they say that the temporary accommodation contract can simply be ignored. Well, the review is timely, given the housing review and the end of the contract, and having not been reviewed for more than a decade, it needs to be. As part of a broader network of support, this contract needs to keep up with the changes in what's happening elsewhere. We have many responsibilities to the most vulnerable people in Newcastle, and so I'm not unclear why this specific contract should be privileged above all others. And the challenge to the opposition, if there are savings achieved for next year, then I hope they have the courage to show what they would do differently, because it's easy to say at this point that they wouldn't go through with it, but then later wait for the authority to do the hard work and actually review the service and then say, oh, well, fair enough. The second amendment is unconscionable. The second amendment is to delay our rollout of real living wage. As I said before, either you believe in it or you don't. The Liberal Democrats are saying that they're going to not pay people properly for their work, delay implementation, which is already a 3-year plan. We need to lead from the front on this campaign in the city for the campaign to be a success. Accreditation depends on a 3-year plan to renew our contracts, and the Liberals seem to want to put this in jeopardy. On top of all of this is not even a permanent saving. It makes years 2 and years 3 much worse because they cannot commit to savings. Number 3, they want to gut the Newcastle Gateshead initiative. The opposition are mistaken in thinking this is free money, and my colleagues will speak more on this. And then Amendment 4 falls since 2 and 3 don't work, and they shouldn't be touching that money. Item 5, again, the opposition are mistaken in thinking this is free money. They want to take the setup costs for this programme from the Novum Festival, which is planned this year, which is leveraged in further money from the north of Tyne, and my colleague will speak on this a bit more. But the money is already committed. It's practically already spent. So I'm not sure where the Liberals think that they're going to pinch this money from. But in terms of the idea, well, as far as I can tell, this is just Gareth Kane standing over people's shoulders and tutting at them when they adjust the thermostat. But for a more professional take on it, Officers are quite sceptical. I've asked officers what they think of this idea. We already have smart systems to manage energy usage, and we have a programme of building checks to drive down usage across the estate. So the idea that we'd find 5 or 10% in addition to this seems unlikely. Overall, the opposition have shown themselves to be unwilling to make difficult decisions about the council spend. They just want to cynically kick the can down the road for political gain, rather than face up to the reality of the challenges created by government's underfunding. Although the opposition's... Sorry?
Can you wind up?
Yep. Although the opposition's math in year 1 is technically adding up, they create a yawning chasm in the following years. Years 2 and 3, they will have to find multiple millions of pounds, and I'm interested to know what planning they have made. I've repeatedly been challenged by Councillor Ferguson, what is our 3-year plan? And yet, he keeps knocking back decisions 1 year after the other, the way that the Chancellor keeps doing on bringing the debt down. What would be really helpful is if the Lib Dems had not saddled the Council with a massive debt when they were on their way out. £400 million of Lobo loans in a property spending spree during the financial crash. Labour has managed to pay off half of this debt, however it continues to be a millstone slung upon the city's neck. We have to maintain cash balances just at the risk that the lenders call in these loans. We could be doing much more with this cash, and yet we are saddled by mismanagement by the opposition.
Thank you, Councillor.
I'll say more positive things in my later speech.
Okay, thank you. I believe the budget report is to be seconded by Councillor Kemp. Thank you. Now I will call on Councillor Ferguson to respond to the report and to move the amendments, and the amendments were published in the items circulated for the meeting, and this is to be seconded by Councillor Hall. Now I'd also like to draw members' attention to the section 151's officers' report in relation to the budget amendments, and which have also been published in the items circulated for the meeting. Councillor Ferguson.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. Here was me thinking this was going to be a civil and well-mannered debate. A few months back, I was leaving a work event late in the evening when I fell into conversation with a man passing through the Helix site. His sleeping bag was slung around his shoulders. He asked me a couple of questions. Did I have a lighter? Could I spare some change? It was clear he was sleeping rough. We fell into conversation. It seemed he just wanted somebody to talk to. He described to me the challenges he was experiencing, the troubles his girlfriend, who by then had joined us, was dealing with. Out of respect and discretion, I won't delve into all that he told me, but suffice it to say, it was clear that he was living on the margins. I've thought about that man and that conversation frequently since, and particularly recently as I've contemplated this Labour budget. The challenges of living in the most challenging circumstances, whether personal, financial or otherwise, are somehow brought into stark relief when you talk about them surrounded by glittering business cathedrals of steel and glass. But why would I think about that conversation particularly now, when we know that Labour have U-turned on implementing swingeing cuts to homelessness prevention services? Because the truth is that proposal has only been delayed, not deleted, because vital safety nets are being removed at a time when targeted government support, as we heard this morning, will only last another 6 months. And we had, at the time that this budget was proposed, expected it to be cut entirely. Because this is a Labour budget that risks creating more challenges for the financially and socially vulnerable in the absence of genuine, meaningful transformation of council services. How have we got here? There is no question that the local government finance landscape is incredibly challenging. There were no crumbs of comfort from the Chancellor's budget this afternoon, although I'm sure we all welcome the announcement of the £100 million of Trailblazer funding coming to the North East. The context is that GDP per capita is down. We have the highest tax burden for decades. More and more people are slipping into higher tax bands despite headline tax cuts. The Chancellor's budget is a desperate deception. It will barely touch the sides for the residents of Newcastle, who are facing soaring mortgage bills, sky-high energy costs, and the bill for the weekly shop going through the roof. And the fundamental answers for local government are wholly lacking. Reform of funding streams, proper needs-based assessments, moving away from a regressive council tax model, reforming business rates so our local economy can thrive. No answers from Westminster. People don't want more Conservative empty promises, whilst local services, especially our NHS, are left on their knees. They want proper change through a general election so we can kick this Conservative government out of office. In the circumstances, we would hope for a Labour-set budget for this Council to address these national challenges as best we are able within the financial constraints available to us. Is that what we have before us? We've missed the opportunity over successive years to maintain free blue badge parking, to provide more funding, not less, for our community sector, community and voluntary sector, to bolster, not whittle away, the communities team, to implement a workplace parking levy that, if Labour had listened when we first brought it up, could be generating an additional £1.4 million for the Council by now. We've watched council tax go up and up. All of these, perhaps, are representative of political differences of opinion. But this year, the Labour Party appear to have resorted to desperate measures, which even sector partners in the city have felt compelled to comment on. In the nearly 6 years I have been in the Chamber, I'm not aware of the levels of concern being quite so high. Pushing costs onto third parties, like the school meal service, making plans to reduce expenditure on homelessness provision at some point in the future, restricting the Sporting Independence Scheme, axing the Crisis Support Scheme, reducing transport provision for children with special educational needs. Does this sound like a Labour budget for a Labour council? And at the same time, spiralling costs on house building projects, money spent on council tax penalties for empty council homes, developer contributions from planning applications sitting in a pot doing nothing. Yes, not all of these can be directly netted off against the revenue budget, but what picture does it paint when difficult decisions are being made? Will residents say, this is value for money? But, Lord Mayor, I am happy to say that there is an alternative, and we don't have to wait for the ballot box to see it. The Liberal Democrat opposition have put forward 5 reasonable, costed amendments that address some of the most problematic elements of this budget. My colleagues will speak in more detail on each amendment shortly, but for now, Lord Mayor, allow me to offer a short summary and clarification of some of the misunderstanding and misrepresentation that we have heard so far. Firstly, we believe it is reasonable to commit to no immediate cost-saving review of the Homelessness Prevention Service. It is positive, for the first time in a long time, that the Labour administration has appeared to listen to consultation feedback and change their original proposal. However, whilst we should always look for better ways to deliver services, it strikes me as absurd that a service that costs £11.54 per capita in Newcastle, compared to a national average of £21.68 for better outcomes, would be first in line for a best value review. And to be clear, the idea that, as a city of sanctuary, the rationale for squeezing homelessness prevention funding because some people on our streets aren't from Newcastle strikes me as obscene. Best to focus our energies elsewhere. Secondly, we would preserve the crisis support and the supporting independence schemes through a modest rephasing of the introduction of the real living wage into external contracts. Let me be clear, increasing the pay of the lowest paid is an important and laudable goal, which we wholeheartedly support. We believe in it. Councillor Frew either misunderstands or misrepresents our position. The real living wage is a vital and valid tool for lifting working people out of poverty, but it must be considered in the round with the preservation of the social safety net. And we must be certain that the policy works, that contracted providers are paying the real living wage to their employees as expected. Councillor Frew himself acknowledges that we cannot absolutely compel them to do so. Labour can strain every sinew to misrepresent our position, but it makes sense to me to build that sense check into the project rollout to make sure this doesn't end up a £6 million punt on Labour's ability to control the local social care market. And the benefits are clear. The potential or actual disadvantages identified in the integrated impact assessments for those with disabilities, BME residents, unpaid carers across socio-economic circumstances, community cohesion and safety, and public health, all acknowledged in the documentation, all would be mitigated. Financial support would continue to be available beyond the 6-month time horizon of the Household Support Fund. Not just lobbying government, however successful, but taking action here. We would ensure that the transport offer for young people aged 16 and over with special educational needs is preserved, making sure that they can still access education. The modest rationalisation of economic development activity mirrors that undertaken by the Labour Group in 2021-22 and 2022-23 to take advantage of regional devolution. It surprises me that similar considerations have not been given by the Labour Group in this set of budget proposals. And, Lord Mayor, the opposition believes that the best thing to do with used cardboard is to recycle it, not to build big monuments with it outside the Civic Centre and tear it down again. So, our final 2 amendments set the balance right, cancelling planned increases in bin charges, which we believe will be counterproductive, and investing in behaviour change interventions at a team level to drive down energy use. It is our contention that bin caddy charges seriously risk leading to increased recycling contamination as people decide not to pay, instead throwing their glass in with everything else. Taking the alternative path will allow the Council to follow where Lib Dem-led councils across the country lead, with best-in-class recycling rates. And if anyone wonders where behaviour change could come from, quite apart from Councillor Kane standing over people's shoulders, you only have to look at the Civic Centre at night to see the lights that are on when nobody's home. Reading through previous budgets over the past 5 years is like looking through a portal to a different world. The choices made this evening are more challenging than ever. The need to drive meaningful transformation of council services ever more important. And it is that we need to see more of, so that residents can be confident the council won't have to declare effective bankruptcy at any time in the future, like Thurrock, like Nottingham, Birmingham, Croydon, Woking, Slough. Make no mistake, a change in Westminster is desperately necessary. But I have no confidence that the Parliamentary Labour Party has any interest in grasping the nettle of local government finance. Every indication is that their attention will be elsewhere, additional funding not forthcoming. So I sincerely hope that the group opposite aren't hanging their hat on a hope that Sir Keir Starmer will flip-flop his way over the horizon with bags of cash. The answer to Newcastle's financial challenges should be dealt with first in Newcastle, by Newcastle. And I hope that the Labour administration here looks at the aspirations of the Inclusive Economy Strategy, the Anti-Poverty Strategy and the Net Zero Action Plan and asks, does this budget deliver those aims? Is it driven by these aspirations or by a need to balance the books before any other consideration? Does it take account of residents' interests, residents' priorities, residents' needs? The Liberal Democrat opposition says no. We say an alternative is possible. An alternative is necessary. Our criticisms are founded on what's in front of us, not what Councillor Frew would like us to be saying. We have made difficult decisions. Will Labour make the difficult decision of realising they're wrong?
Thank you, Councillor Ferguson. I think the response to the report and to the seconding of the amendments is down to Councillor Hall. Seconded and reserved. Right. Can I remind members that because of Standing Order 17F 4, Section 4, the budget proposals and the amendments will be the subject of a single debate, and each amendment will be voted on in turn. Now, there is no limit to the number of speakers on the budget report, but each member can only speak once, and each speaker can be allowed up to 5 minutes. Now then, I have had a number of members who've already indicated that they wish to speak, so I will take those speakers one at a time, and then I will ask other members to indicate if they want to speak, and then I will call on members who've reserved the right to speak. That would be Councillor Kemp and Councillor Hall, and then Councillor Frew has the right of reply, and then we'll move on to a named vote. So Councillor Hall has reserved his right to second the report, so I'm going to move on to the speakers. First speaker is Councillor Kilgour, to be followed by Councillor Taylor, to be followed by Councillor Mitchell. Okay, so can you prepare yourself, Councillor Kilgour?
Thank you, Lord Mayor. As everyone in this chamber knows, despite 14 years of coalition and Conservative government's draconian cuts, despite local governments nationally facing a financial cliff edge, ever-increasing demand for council services, an ongoing cost of living crisis, and rising levels of poverty in our communities, we still have a duty to deliver a balanced budget. People are often surprised by how much of the council's budget is spent on providing adults and children's social care. And looking at the overall sums, I'm sure it would be easy to make the assumption that shaving a few million here or there would be a relatively simple thing to do. But what isn't immediately obvious when you look at those overall figures is that they're made up of individual care packages and placements, multiple year contracts, and buildings and staffing costs to provide everything from specialist dementia care services, services for people with profound learning and physical disabilities, right through to reablement care, community transport, and social workers. And within that, we have a statutory and a moral duty to provide social care to anyone who meets the national eligibility criteria. Short-term, temporary funding from government might give ministers a headline or two, but does nothing to help us plan for the long-term care and support of our communities. Focusing on hospital discharge might help some Tory boroughs, but doesn't help us address the cost pressures that we face locally. Working in social care is emotionally and often physically demanding. It is well documented that adult social care nationally is facing a recruitment and retention crisis, with the sector still reeling from the pandemic and the burnout of so many workers. I'm proud that one way we're helping to address this in Newcastle is by showing we value those workers and the work that they do by becoming a real living wage employer. The majority of staff who benefit from this in the city work in the social care sector, particularly those working in commissioned services, and the majority of whom are women. At a time when supermarket chains make national news because they're increasing their rates of pay, I have to say I'm appalled that the opposition think it's appropriate to delay paying care workers and others the wages they deserve. Delivering savings year after year is hard, and there's no getting away from that. And these proposals are ambitious, but I believe they're achievable. You cannot take £369 million out of a system and not feel the effects. But I remain proud of our approach. In adult social care, we haven't taken the easy route and cut our services to the bone. We are constantly innovating and redesigning services to help people to thrive, so adults of all ages and abilities are not isolated in their homes or stuck in unsuitable residential care, but can engage with and contribute to their communities. And these proposals don't sit in isolation. Our staff continue to do all they can to manage demand and to prevent or delay the need for social care in the first place. As I highlighted in January last year, we had over 10,000 new requests for support, an increase of almost 600 requests. And in addition to that, 4,800 people received ongoing long-term support. These numbers are important, but what's even more important is that behind every statistic is a person we've kept safe or who we've helped to retain their independence, a carer we've given support or respite to, or someone whose life we've enhanced in some way by supporting them to do the things that they value and that bring them joy. I'm proud also to be the political lead for our work to prevent people in our city tipping into poverty and to alleviate poverty where it already exists. I believe that our work to support Newcastle residents through the cost of living crisis and our focus on health in all policies, understanding that poverty, community well-being, employability, housing, nutrition, food insecurity, active travel, net zero and sustainability, and the promotion of physical activity are all inextricably linked, and that this shows we have our residents' well-being at the heart of what we do and that our priorities are the right ones for this city and our people. The budget setting process is difficult and becomes more difficult each year. We must provide more services to more people with fewer resources than ever before. We recognise that life gets harder for families across this city and across this country the longer this government is in power, and that structural inequalities continue to go unaddressed as the Westminster psychodrama continues unabated. But we mustn't lose sight of the many, many services we continue to deliver and to deliver well. This budget, while challenging, is the best way for us to continue to provide those services that so many of our residents rely on, and I urge Council to support it. Thank you, Lord Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Kilgour. Councillor Taylor.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. I'm speaking in favour of Amendment 1. Newcastle is rightly proud of its services for homeless people. Heriot-Watt University's study of homelessness prevention in 2019 stated that Newcastle is a city facing an extremely challenging context, but managing to maintain extremely low and stable levels of homelessness. They reported that Newcastle had the highest rate of homelessness prevention of any core city, the second lowest rate of the use of temporary accommodation, and a record of zero use of bed and breakfast accommodation since 2006. A tribute to both the Liberal Democrat administration and the current administration. And that's in spite of the homeless services having an occupancy rate of 99% in the last 2 years. And of course, we all share the aim of maintaining our record. I was therefore shocked to see the Labour administration's draft budget, which stated that as part of the recommissioning of the services for homeless people, due at the end of 2024, you plan to redesign the system and make efficiency savings by reducing the number of beds commissioned. The draft budget stated that the new system would make sure people continue to be supported appropriately while moving away from a reliance on temporary accommodation, and a saving of £1.6 million was proposed across 24-25 and 25-26. I was shocked because the result of the review and the saving was going to be agreed before the review was even carried out. Of course, that's typical of the administration, which has frequently decided... Could I just ask you to pause a second there, Councillor Taylor? Could I ask the people responsible for the live stream to check that the feed is still working? It is? OK, thank you. Carry on. Of course, this is typical of the administration, which has frequently decided the result of consultation in advance. A good example of that was the closure of Stonyhurst Bridge in my ward, where the views of the majority of residents were ignored. Citizens Advice Newcastle gave the following response to the draft budget. We agree that regular impact reviews and evaluation for any service is important, but simply halving the budget and stating that the service will become more efficient seems naive. In contrast, a service is often less efficient if it is underfunded, or if cuts come first, and if the level of cuts is enforced quickly. Current proposals imply that these changes will start after the current commissioned services contracts end from October, and this only gives us 9 months to fully evaluate and mitigate for the loss of £1.6 million to homeless prevention services. Now, of course, I'm delighted that the Labour administration has listened to reason and has removed the budget saving this year, but I still believe that the proposed consultation has the same aim, i.e. to cut costs, which is why we are opposing such consultation having any place in the budget process, and that's the key point. It shouldn't be part of the budget process. Now, I was told that savings could be achieved because many people are staying longer than they should in temporary accommodation and could be moved to their own home by bringing void properties back into use. However, that view is strongly contradicted by the voluntary sector. Shelter tell us that people are not bed blocking and not moving on from supported accommodation because providers are deliberately keeping them there. It's because the majority of people living in supported accommodation have complex and multiple needs, such as poor health, mental illness, substance misuse, domestic abuse, and that for some people, independence is a longer journey than others. A supported environment due to their needs is what they require and why they stay. In other words, they stay in a supported accommodation because they need to. It is entirely unrealistic to think that placing a person with high support needs into YHN because there are no beds in supported accommodation would be successful in the large majority of cases. Shelter also raises concerns that the reduction of commissioned beds could lead to an increase in unregulated private providers. They tell us we already have a couple of private providers coming into the city who are taking up council staff time and resource to try and improve the conditions and safeguarding concerns for the residents living there. Of course, there should be ongoing discussions with providers about the best ways of reducing homelessness and helping people move on, but this shouldn't be as part of the council's budget considerations. We recognise the council does need to make difficult decisions to save money, and that's why it's so disappointing that our calls over the last 10 years to consider joint services with other local authorities have been ignored. The recent decision to share a Director of Public Health with Gateshead was of course forced on the council due to the lack of suitable applicants, but it could be a first step. Let's look at what other councils have done. Community safety, payroll, employer database, IT and HR services, and possibly such services as equipment loans and the provision of services for the most severely disabled children and adults in our region. The new combined authority is an ideal opportunity to look at shared services, either with one or two of our neighbouring councils or across the whole region. Reducing administration costs and duplication would give us more money to spend on our most vulnerable residents, which is what we all want. I urge colleagues to support Amendment 1 and the other Liberal Democrat amendments.
Thank you very much, Councillor Taylor. Councillor Mitchell.
Dear Lord Mayor, I want to talk about social housing. I was contacted by a resident at the weekend in Bamborough House in Westerhope who is really worried about the rise in her rent. The rent is increasing to £717 a month for her flat, which is over a £50 month increase, which was exactly the same as last year, over a £100 increase in 2 years. This is not the only increase they are facing. The cost of the warden in her block is also increasing, though the hours the warden is at Bamborough House is reduced dramatically. The couple are so worried that they may have to move from the flat that they love because it is unaffordable, which is really shocking when it comes to being in social housing. How can this increase in social housing be justified at this time when residents, as we know, are struggling so much with the cost of living crisis with all the bills that are going up and up all the time? That's not including the council tax rise, and also there's also been said that they might have a rise in April for the cost of energy. I understand the constraints that we have, but when you look at social housing, it really is not the best deal for the residents. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Mitchell. The next round of speakers, Councillor Hay, Councillor Huddart and Councillor Donnelly. Councillor Hay.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. This has not been an easy process. No administration wants to make savings. However, our responsibility has been to navigate through the challenges with a clear focus on our residents' needs and the well-being of our communities. As has rightly been pointed out, the battle for local government funding is ongoing. The cost of living crisis is far from over. Families continue to feel the pinch and are struggling to make ends meet. In response, we have taken action, introducing the real living wage for council employees and safeguarding the Welfare Rights Service, a lifeline to many in our city. Today's government spring budget only underscores the uphill struggle we face in securing the resources necessary to fulfil our commitments to the people we serve. The local government finance settlement and the fight for funding for vital projects such as the Tyne Bridge restoration are emblematic of the ongoing battle. We find ourselves grappling with a Conservative government that in many ways has reached the end of the road, tinkering at the edges, desperate to cling to power, but with no interest in making meaningful change. Now, talking about tinkering at the edges, the latest Focus headlines, the opposition amendments, proposals that would significantly impact our city's economic development and cultural vibrancy. Firstly, the suggestion to cut funding from Newcastle Gateshead initiative, including the Invest Newcastle, is deeply concerning. Such a move would obliterate any Newcastle-focused initiatives aimed at attracting businesses, investors and visitors to our city. We cannot afford such a reckless move. The proposal to raid the Great North Cultural Fund is equally short-sighted and would be detrimental to our city's cultural landscape. Established with a one-off airport dividend to fund events, the Great North Cultural Fund has played a vital role in fostering cultural enrichment and community engagement. The £100,000 allocated to Novum, Newcastle's summer festival, is a strategic investment in our city's cultural identity and economic potential. It allows us to celebrate our city, our culture and our history. Approved by Cabinet, these funds have already been put to use, alongside a substantial North of Tyne Combined Authority £400,000 grant to fund the festival. Raiding these funds now would not only jeopardise the success of the festival, but also undermine the integrity of the Great North Cultural Fund's purpose and the investments made into our city's cultural fabric. Lord Mayor, this budget is not about numbers and figures alone. It's about people and it's about our communities. As an administration, we remain committed to creating a city that works for everyone, where everyone can thrive. I urge colleagues to support the budget. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Hay. And now we move on to Councillor Huddart.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. My comments this evening are related to the issue of homelessness and rough sleeping. But I would like to say I'm quite flattered to have been singled out by Councillor Frew. But unfortunately, and he was quoting me from a question about why a stock transfer to another registered provider, which is a perfectly legal option, was not considered during the housing review. Thank you for that. I'm sorry you misquoted it. But to talk about me suggesting we give away stock is really stretching reality. However, on to my comments about homelessness. Nationally, the numbers of people experiencing this problem have been going up year on year, affecting urban and rural areas alike. This city is lucky to have the comprehensive and thorough services it has compared with other core cities. And we've achieved national recognition for the work undertaken by our homeless team. And it's thanks to the work of this staff team that we have far lower numbers of rough sleepers and homeless people than other comparative authorities. We are lucky to have the services of several dedicated charities here, like Shelter and Cyrenians and Crisis and the community mental health teams, who work with and provide services for these people who have complex needs. And although we offer good advice and information and signposting, it is not all perfect. Homeless individuals and couples do get offers of accommodation from our partner agencies, but the idea that we have a stock of livable flats and houses just waiting for occupation is really detached from reality. It's a long uphill road to recover and integration for most of these people. We have in this city a severe lack of affordable housing for individuals and families of all shapes and sizes, and a shocking high waiting list for those who need social housing. So the priorities are skewed here. We should be tackling the void properties which lose us money every day, as well as building new homes which would bring in increased rental income. And I don't see this anywhere on the budget plans, so where is the incentive to build? Hundreds of other councils publish their plans to finance new build every day, but for some reason it doesn't happen here. The idea of cutting the budget for this important service was shocking and unnecessary. It was also disturbing to see that it took active lobbying from organisations like Shelter to outline the dreadful impact your proposed cuts would have. How did these decisions to reduce accommodation for the homeless equate with the council's aspirations to be a city of sanctuary, or for its aims of equality and fair access to housing? And I would like to quote from the recently published proposed city plan, and it says, "The city has aims to help those in poverty to be fair and inclusive and support those experiencing economic hardship." We actually have a good service here in Newcastle and good staff, and it doesn't need reviewing, so please leave it alone and review your own dismal failing housing policies and support Amendment 1.
Thank you, Councillor Huddart. Councillor Donnelly.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. Firstly, it would be wrong of me not to say that this council and other councils face unprecedented situations with regards to the current finances. Lord Mayor, we all come into this place to help people and look after the most vulnerable by shielding them from the budget cuts. The initial proposal by the council to cut bed space for the homeless from 3.3 million to 1.6 million was not only heartless, but the impact expressed by charities was that the initial proposal could potentially lead to individuals dying. Thankfully, this proposal was overturned, but to have suggested it in the first place must breach every principle that this council stands for. I therefore support Amendment 1. The council has proposed to increase council rents by 7.7%, in effect pricing residents out of their homes, as was previously mentioned by Councillor Mitchell. This is a bitter pill, knowing that the council has taken back control of Your Homes Newcastle on the basis that the change would lead to cost savings of almost £1 million a year. Only the council could turn a saving into a negative as far as residents are concerned. Whilst we are asking residents of this city to pay yet higher council tax, it is worth noting that £7.5 million remains uncollected from previous years. Now, Lord Mayor, let's look at council investments. As we discuss the council finances tonight, we have £68.3 million in borrowing on the Eldon Square, with nothing being returned. Equally, the Crown Plaza Hotel stands at £27.5 million. And although the current business has made £1 million in profit, obviously none of this amount benefits the taxpayer. Northern Rock Tower stands at £18.2 million, and it has not yet returned a penny to the council for this huge investment when purchased back in 2009. The debt stands as tall as the building itself. There seems to be a trend. Recently, the council had to bail out a housing company that had cost the taxpayer £4 million to build just a merely 14 homes. To summarise, Lord Mayor, the council proposed to reduce bed space for the most vulnerable, but has invested a total of £30.6 0.8 million in the Crown Plaza Hotel, which is a 4-star hotel. The reality is that all of the assets that the council have heavily invested in are now worth less than the debt which is actually owed. The council's motto should be pay more, get less. And finally, Lord Mayor, I was quite surprised, and it was mentioned by Councillor Ferguson earlier on when he brought up the Civic Centre looking like Blackpool illuminations, that when I passed recently, 50 days after the Christmas tree light should have been switched off, there was the Christmas tree still blazing. And yet the council said, in my response to this very question, well, it was only £2.44. Now, I can recall a former leader of council, Nick Forbes, when he said, spend every penny wisely. Of course, the old additive saying is, take care of the pennies and the pounds take care of themselves. Lord Mayor, tonight we have a budget which is about choices. Hard choices, I accept. There are amendments this evening by the Lib Dems. I support them, and I hope that others can support them. As Councillor Ferguson rightly said before, there'd been previous amendments in years gone by with regards to not charging for disabled parking, and sadly the council never accepted that. Let's look at them, let's put the politics to one side and hope that we can accept the amendments. Thank you, Lord Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Donnelly. We're carrying on with the list of speakers that I've got. I've got Councillor Ali next, to be followed by Councillor Campion. Councillor Ali.
Thank you, Lord Mayor, and good evening, comrades. The proposal regarding temporary accommodation is no longer going ahead as a result of the consultation. Therefore, I believe this is evidence that we did not make up our minds before carrying out the consultation and are an administration that does listen. It appears the opposition speeches may not have been updated in light of these recent events. The aims of this council are crystal clear, however, the aims of the current government are sadly not. This government has given us 14 years of forced, devastating austerity, and this is how we've got here, Councillor Ferguson. Despite the current cost of living crisis, it continues to cut back local authorities to its bone, seeing many around the country unable to deliver, and as a result, a rise in Section 114 notices being issued across the country. Something that was previously a rare occurrence is now becoming all too common. The UK is the 5th richest country in the world, yet food banks, increased unsolved crimes, and long hospital waits have become an unattractive feature of it. Austerity is breaking this country. In our own city, the link between long periods of austerity and growing deprivation is becoming clearer and clearer every year. We see the growing demand on council support services all across the city, local charities more stretched than ever, and food bank usage at an all-time high. Child poverty is affecting more than 1 in 3 children in our classrooms. More and more families struggle to afford heating, equip their children with adequate clothing, and afford the most basic extracurricular opportunities. Government inaction has led to these social problems, yet it continues to concentrate on culture wars in the hope to win the next general election. We have seen the failings of incompetent Home Secretaries to Prime Ministers desperately trying to convey what they think are the issues we face as a country and views that dehumanise the most vulnerable in our society. However, we are committed to ensuring we continue to deliver a balanced budget, even in these most challenging of times, and therefore can continue providing vital services to residents across the city. We must all continue working hard to ensure our residents are safe, can live their lives, study and work in this city with dignity and without fear. However, this budget continues making provisions to protect our residents and support them. We are working with food banks to provide vouchers and welfare teams to ensure benefit take-up. Our housing team are working hard to make sure people can pay their rent, and with a never evict into homelessness policy. Councillor Plew has already given many examples of the extremely important commitments we are continuing to make for our residents to improve quality of life and meet our council priorities, which includes tackling poverty. I won't repeat the points that he has made earlier regarding homelessness. I do want to thank the officers that have worked tirelessly under our political leadership to put together a balanced budget yet again and make sure we meet our legal obligations. I also want to thank our residents that have engaged in the consultation process. Thank you, Lord Mayor.
Thank you very much, Councillor Ali. Councillor Campion.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. I want to speak to you today specifically in support of Amendment 4 of the Liberal Democrats' amendment to tonight's budget. But given Councillor Ali's comments, I think it's important that we reflect on how we actually got here today. We've heard talk of the damaging cuts from 2010 to today and the dire state of local government funding. And that is true. But let's actually remember how it is we actually got here. The last Labour government left us all, in their own words, with no money left, proposing to, again, in their own words, cut harder than Thatcher. And again, in their own words, deliver more cuts to public spending in 2010 to 2015, as was actually delivered by the government. So might I suggest to colleagues across the way that those in glass houses probably shouldn't be throwing stones. Now, Amendment 4. This amendment calls specifically for the reversal of proposed charges for replacement caddies, which will disproportionately impact those residents from lower socio-economic backgrounds. Often, caddies and bins are stolen, vandalised, and in some instances, set alight in acts of heinous antisocial behaviour, leaving residents feeling distressed and upset at being victims of crime. For this Labour Council to then add insult to injury by charging them to replace these is frankly shameful. Why should we ask victims of crimes to shell out for these replacements when, as we can see, the option is there to avoid doing this? Let us not forget, the area where this sort of antisocial behaviour is at its highest is those areas where our residents are often having to make the hard decisions about where their cash is going. Do you really think these residents will choose to pay to replace their caddies or their bins, or do you think they'll instead prioritise paying their bills, heating their homes and feeding their children? If we go through with this change, we will see greater contamination of our recycling. We will see more littering and fly tipping, and we will see the quality of life for residents across the city fall because of this. If we put these charges in, we'll be saving a penny today to cost us pounds tomorrow. Let's invest in the well-being of our city and scrap this silly charge. Thank you, Lord Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Campion. The next speaker is Councillor Williams, to be followed by Councillor Christine Morrissey.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. I rather expected Councillor Campion to be talking rubbish, and so he did. We do ask people to look after their bins. They're not our bins, they're their bins. And of course we must charge if they don't have them anymore. We ask them to put them safely and securely in their properties and just put them and present them out on the day of collection, and we must take some responsibility for that. As already explained by my colleague Alex, this falls anyway because their Amendment 2 and 3 simply doesn't work. Amendment 5, where we have the notion of energy reduction within the council through our teams. Let me point to some of the things that we're already doing. We reviewed the energy efficiency standards of 3,496 properties across the city and secured £2.32 million of funding to improve energy efficiency in 346 homes. We invested £1.2 million in retrofit upgrades to fabric heating and adding solar panels in 107 homes, with an additional £4.2 million secured for phase 2. 37.2 million funding has been secured to decarbonise and add eco-upgrades, such as heat pumps and solar panels, to 30 key buildings in the city, including 15 local schools, the Discovery Museum, Gosforth and East End pools. Expanding heat networks at the Helix Energy Fourth Yards and Biker sites to provide low-carbon energy for residents across the city. And since 2010, our emissions from council buildings and travel have been reduced by 41%, amounting to 39,000 tonnes of CO2. They're just a few examples. So whilst the opposition would have us saving pennies, we're investing millions of secured funding. I ask members to support the budget.
Thank you, Councillor Williams. Councillor Christine Morrissey.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. I'd like to speak on Amendment 2 and 3, please. I'd like to set the scene for this amendment, Amendment 2, for recalibrating the real living wage. I'd also like to clarify that my colleagues and I very much welcome the real living wage and are fully supportive of initiatives that lift people out of poverty. So let's get that one out of the way straight away. Over the past 4 years, many of our residents have experienced severe financial hardship. Newcastle is the 53rd most deprived out of the 326 English authorities. And current research indicates 42% of children in Newcastle are growing up in poverty. However, when broken down by ward, the most deprived ward has 61.9%. Whilst we all agree the best way out of poverty is for children to have working parents, and preferably parents who are paid in a way which reflects the work they do, the recent pandemic and crisis within the healthcare sector has highlighted the poor wages some of our key workers receive. I wholeheartedly agree that raising wages of workers in hospitality, catering and support services too, jobs that rely mainly on female workers, is fundamentally a positive move. However, not at the expense of cutting services which the most vulnerable families rely on. All of us here will have had personal choices to make when it comes to our own budgeting and how we will spend our money, and it's not easy, often making compromises and, to misquote Aristotle, often choosing the lesser of two evils. However, our role here tonight is to ensure services are administered equitably. How can we justify giving some people a pay rise by diverting money from services to the most vulnerable residents who are already in need following a family crisis or disaster? The sad irony here is that some of the residents who will no longer have access to services which supported them to maintain a very basic home will be forfeiting this to support the wage rise for others. Earlier this year, all councillors received an invitation from Citizens Advice to discuss the ramifications of reduced funding. We all know of community and residents groups who will not be getting the same level of funding from our ward grants and so cannot support the vulnerable and needy in their communities. The voluntary sector as a whole is experiencing reduced funding, which is creating a perfect storm for those in the city who need most help. I absolutely agree with the real living wage. I want it introduced as soon as it is economically possible. But what I don't want is that its introduction at this point means much needed services to individuals are cut. Finally, 3 short but relevant points. 1, it is an offence not to pay the minimum wage. 2, it is not an offence not to provide the real living wage. 3, I agree that when choosing the lesser of two evils, we're still left with an evil. I genuinely wish we could provide the increase to our hard-working employees. While I wholeheartedly welcome and support the aspiration, I cannot agree to sanction a decision which will be to the detriment of our most vulnerable residents. So I urge people to agree to the amendment too. And as I'm fast running out of time, Amendment 3 is minimising duplication of funding streams with similar remits. It's very pleasing to see within the Newcastle Plan for Children and Young People 2 priorities over the next 3 years. One of them to ensure every, and that is every, young person can identify and pursue pathways to a fulfilling future, and to develop a broader post-16 local offer for SEND children, which includes employment, education and training. I'm going to cut to the end. The local authority is mainly responsible for funding post-16 transport, with few exceptions. However, There are several different funding streams that support economic development. And following elections in May, Newcastle will be a partner in the North East Mayoral Combined Authority with a £1.4 billion investment budget and a remit to support economic security for everyone. With this in mind, I urge councillors to support the Amendment 3 and ensure that the post-16 SEN transport cuts are reversed to enable what has been identified as a priority for the Council to assure every young person can identify and pursue pathways to a fulfilling future. Thank you, Lord Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Morrissey. You cut that short very well. Councillor Story to be followed by Councillor Stone.
Lord Mayor, Council, the budget process this year has been extremely difficult, as it has been year on year for the last 14 years. As a Cabinet member, as a Labour group, and of course as a wider council, each and every one of us has had the opportunity to contribute, to make suggestions, and of course to disagree and to put forward other proposals. Our communities have also been consulted, as have services, because this is how democracy works. That's crucial. But tonight we sign off the budget. I know you, like me, will have found many of these decisions very hard to make. Many of them have been unpalatable, extremely difficult. But as has already been noted, we absolutely have to balance the books. It is not an option not to return a balanced budget, and we are seeing across the country the consequences of that. I wish that I could take every reduction in my portfolio off the table, and let me tell you, I tried. But of course, I can't. Yesterday, the opposition put forward a suggestion for one of the areas in my portfolio, and I'd just like to spend a little bit of time talking about that. That suggestion came in at the 11th hour, and so I'm responding to that now tonight in Council, but there have been other opportunities to have that discussion. Send Transport, I want to reassure people firstly, is not being completely removed. Send Transport is something that we will look at with each child, with each family, on a case-by-case basis. Each child is absolutely unique, and there will be a unique solution for that child. Social workers will have a discussion with the family, with children, and we will put in place, our staff will put in place absolutely measures that ensure that those children continue to have access to education. That support might be financial, it might be having a bus pass, it might be having a travel pass, it might be looking for funding or grants to get a bike, whatever that is, or it might be training to help young people access transport for themselves. For many young people who have disabilities, who are SEND, this could be absolutely life-enhancing and liberating. Send Transport isn't statutory. We don't have to do it. As you already know, we've been told other areas cut this a long time ago. We didn't. And we are going to ensure that every child continues to have that opportunity to access education, which is so important. So please be reassured about that. And any families listening tonight, that is absolutely the case. It's imperative, due to budget cuts, that we continue to invest in new policies and new approaches to keep our children and young people safe and supported. And that means we have to rebuild services and skills around their needs. Our largest cost pressure, both locally and nationally, is high-cost placements for children who cannot live at home. Tonight, we must be very mindful that thousands of parents in this city have excelled in nurturing their children and loving secure homes, but sadly, that is not everyone's story. Good parenting is learned, it takes skill, it takes time, and it takes patience. And that's why our parents, foster carers, kinship carers, adoptive parents are simply amazing. No matter the relationship, when there is a cry for help, it must be heeded, and our staff do that. Asylum-seeking children, disabled children, those with learning disabilities, or from black or minoritised groups need excellence and care, and they need safe and secure and loving homes. And that's what we want for every child. Unfortunately, we're not always able to achieve that for every child. I was going to talk a little bit about the high-cost placements because I know that is the biggest pressure on children's social care budget. Costs are spiralling nationally, and we have drawn attention to government about this, and we are lobbying to make changes. We've also invested in new approaches and new care homes, and they're going to be opening soon. I'm proud of the work of children's social care, of the work of the budget. I know that every member of staff has had sleepless nights, stress and anxiety, and this shouldn't be the case. We should have our staff entirely focused on children and their needs and not on budget deficits. So I would please urge people to really trust and believe that we have looked, the staff here have looked at every single option, and we believe that this is something that we can absolutely make work for families. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Story. Councillor Stone.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. This is my 26th council budget debate, and over that time I think I've built up a knowledge base of the recurring themes and recurring messages that come out at most council budget meetings. But some clear trends are apparent in recent years. There has been a move away by this council in the budget proposals, where a previous leader was once proclaiming that he would be doing everything he could to protect the most vulnerable in the city. That commitment has been dropped, and that may well be because of the pressures that the council is under, but that is a change that we've noticed in the last couple of years. There's another important trend here, that there is a growing breakdown in what you might call the local government social contract between the council taxpayers and the council. There is an implicit understanding that people pay their council tax in expectation the council will deliver local services that protect the welfare of the public and maintain the physical fabric, the shared infrastructure and the common heritage of a city. And I think it's not controversial for local taxpayers to have a right that they will maintain those levels of basic services and maintain that local neighbourhoods and infrastructure. And that relationship is broken down in Newcastle as it's breaking down elsewhere. But as a representative of my community, I feel it's reasonable to speak on behalf of that dissatisfaction, a significant imbalance between what the council taxpayers in my ward pay in council tax and council rents and the level of investment that they receive in return from the council. In short, Lord Mayor, they perceive the council is more concerned about raising revenue for itself in the face of an ever-worsening financial situation than it is about helping local people to balance their own household budgets during difficult times. I don't think that the residents of my ward will be delighted they are facing a 4.99% increase in council tax when they see such little investment in my area by that council. We are now in a situation where even a Band A property in the city is paying £1,500 a year, and for higher bands they are paying significantly more than that. So tenants in my ward are not happy that they are they are seeing money 7% rent rise this year, when they're seeing money siphoned out of the HLA budget for investment to bail out some decidedly bad deals, which recently involved spending £4 million on 14 new homes, a deal which its promoters called a fantastic opportunity for the council. I wonder whatever happened to them. So I'm proud to speak I also want to mention about the situation in terms of the growing backlog in terms of maintenance of roads and pavements in the city, which is now approaching, I understand, £200 million citywide, whilst frantically denying that there are any plans, no current plans, to spend millions on a bus lane network. I'm particularly thinking in this budget debate, Lord Mayor, about I'm speaking in favour of amendments which will remove the need for many of the cuts which Labour are proposing for some of the most vulnerable people in our city. I'm particularly thinking about the representations from the parents of severely disabled young people in my ward whose lives are greatly enhanced by being able to attend a specialist unit, a day service 1 day a week, but who are set to have that taken away next week by the removal of their free send transport. I'm thinking, Councillor Story, about the Children's Commission's report this week, which talked about the huge regional variations in the use of child in need plans, in which he identifies Newcastle's rate of children on a need plan as being at the lowest in England at 0.3%. I'm sure some of the members opposite are genuinely concerned about child poverty and about how children's services can protect those in need in Newcastle. And they have the opportunity tonight to put their principles into practice and to vote for an amendment which will stop the Labour administration's plan to cut an early intervention team for children at risk of needing to go into care. How would we achieve this? We have long called for more shared services. Over the years, Labour have scorned them and then quietly moved towards them. And in the brave new environment of NEMCA, there is opportunity on economic development, on tourism and investment promotion. It's in the interest of the region to work together on that, to promote economic and employment growth and to cooperate for the good of the region as a whole. We can recalibrate and realign that particular offer. And we know that Labour will tell us that this budget is about difficult decisions and hard choices, but we know this particular choice is not hard and not difficult. I'll make one more final point, Lord Mayor. I'm unable to find it mentioned in the budget documents, but I'd welcome an opportunity for the Council and the Audit Committee perhaps as well to look closely into the sums that are held by this Council in Section 106 contributions. I've raised this issue with relevant officers. I'm aware that FOI information shows that Newcastle had in 2023 an uncommitted balance of around £32 million in its 106 current accounts, including £8 million for affordable housing, £8 million for highways, £8 million for new schools. And given the budget debate, the Commission would welcome a confirmation by the administration on how and where they plan to use this money, because frankly, we all know we need it. Thank you, Lord Mayor.
Thank you very much, Councillor Stone. Councillor Mains, to be followed by Councillor Kane.
Thank you, Lord
Councillor
Mayor.
Means.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. I'm pleased to say that this budget continues to support our residents when they're feeling the cost of living crisis more than ever. We have continued to see the effects of the government's austerity policy and indifference to the struggles of so many people across the country, and that is why I'm proud to be able to stand up and say how much we are doing and how much our staff and officers are doing, because I do want to praise them, because I do feel there's a lot of criticism tonight, and I'm not sure if that was some sort of strange accusation about hiding budgets around the 106 money, but anyway. So let me start with the amazing work that council officers do by highlighting one specific area. One area that we do really well is that we make sure that across the city, residents get their full entitlement to benefits. Over £22.8 million has been received by 22,000 residents. Vital money from our services that will help them tackle the fast pace of price increases over the last few years. We've also supported another 4,000 residents to write off £1.4 million in problematic debt. Massive debt has huge economic impacts in addition to the social and psychological impact of having something hanging over you. And we helped 300 people access universal credit. In addition to all these welfare rights services that we've done, we've provided financial support to carers and given one-off payments to families being particularly affected by the cost of living. And we are continuing with things like our employment assistance programmes across the city to give support to people so that they are work ready. We've even run job fairs and have been able to offer on-the-spot interviews to applicants for certain teams, like, for example, social care. And that's only a fraction of the 800 services that Council provides. And this budget comes in tough times for the authority, but I'm proud of all that we do. Looking at the amendments, I mean, as a general observation, I was very disappointed with them. I mean, they're little more than 2 sides of A4, and they look to me more like sound bites and slogans for upcoming campaign literature. Proposing a rephasing of the real living wage demonstrates to me their complete lack of commitment to help residents increase their standard of living and life chances by leaving them in poverty. It's just utterly abhorrent. Final proposal, which is basically criticising staff for not turning out the lights as they leave a room or turning up the thermostat, I just find quite patronising. I mean, the next be asking for payroll to dock their wages for poor behaviour. Labour group has looked long and hard at the budget challenges, and people have been involved. So, you know, the level of criticism is quite astonishing. We're here so we can protect and deliver services for people of the city. Some of those decisions have been really difficult, and we've had some real robust discussions about them. I'd like to say, please oppose the amendments from the opposition. I'd also like to say, please oppose the amendments from the independents, but, well, there's none. I mean, at the bottom line, it's very easy to criticise, but it's harder to contribute effectively to the running of this council. Thank you, Lord Mayor.
Thank you very much, Councillor Means. Councillor Keane.
Yes, thank you, Lord Mayor. Councillor Frew is right about one thing. I do have an unhealthy obsession with thermostats. Last winter, I walked into, ironically, the Climate Change Committee. It was -4 degrees centigrade outside, but inside the committee room, it was roasting hot. I went over to the thermostat, and it was 25 degrees centigrade. Now, I'm not a natural Geordie, as you know, but even for me, that's T-shirt and shorts temperature. When I turned it down, the air conditioning came on, ironically. I could see Councillor Penny Evans shivering with the memory because she was sat under the vent and ended up having to put her coat back on. But that's maybe an extreme example, but I find committee rooms are often overheated. The thermostats are way above normal room temperature. And there's a good reason for that, is that amongst the general public, there is a lack of understanding of how thermostats actually work. And we talk about lighting and everything else. Now, we've had this amendment in before, and it was rejected. And it's very disappointing because it is free money. And particularly now, with energy costs soaring, it's even more free money. You know, you should not look a gift horse in the mouth. And particularly as we're launching behavioural change campaigns for the general public, I think we need to look inside as well, because energy efficiency never stops. You know, Councillor Frew might think he knows it all. He might think that the energy bills are screwed down. I can assure him they are not. You can always squeeze more out of the system. And as I say, it is free money. I would like to move on to the caddy tax. This, to me, is a completely ridiculous proposal. We had to cost in the cost of removing it, but actually, I think if it's implemented, it will cost the council money. If a quarter of the residents who lose their caddies, who normally ask for a replacement caddy, stump up the £5, that's less than £9,000. That will easily be wiped out by the cost of extra contamination from people mixing their glass in with the rest of their waste. Now, that's financial terms. There's also environmental terms. But I mentioned the public behavioural change programme. For most people, their most basic interaction with environmental affairs is sorting the rubbish and putting it into the right place for recycling. So if we lose trust in that touch point by charging people for having their caddy stolen, now, Councillor Williams says people have to look after him. Our bin collection often happens before 7 a.m. Does she want me to be up at 6:30 in the morning and every other resident ready to run out as soon as the bin lorry comes down the street and then pull it back in again so the caddy doesn't get stolen? For most people, they have to leave it out the night before, and it may not be collected before they leave for work, so it'll be tea time. So it's out for about 20 hours. It's absolutely crazy to punish people if somebody steals their caddy in the meantime. So I think on both the last thing I just want to mention is the proposal to save £100,000 through increased recycling. Saying as the council has fallen to the third worst amongst metropolitan boroughs for recycling, I think we really need to change direction radically to achieve that budget saving. And I would refer Cabinet members and the Council to the motion that hopefully we'll get to, but probably not, on the agenda tonight, because I think the answer is in there. These are meant to be helpful amendments. We are waiving free money under Councillor Frew's nose, so please vote for them. And even if you want to save face and vote against them, please implement them anyway. Thank you, Lord Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Keane. Councillor Gray, to be followed by Councillor Lovett. Thank you, Councillor Gray.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. I find some of what's been discussed here from the Liberal Democrats to be quite strange around the real living wage. There's lots of warm words and polite nods and positive things to be said, but when it actually comes to supporting council staff and ensuring that they're provided wages in which they can live on, they are left wanting. If they're looking to make the proposal using this pot of money, I find to be absolutely ridiculous and not in keeping with anything that's been said this evening around their supposed conscience that's been discovered at some point over the last 14 years of Conservative, Lib Dem and Conservative governments. And I think to put into perspective what the real living wage is really about, from their website, is that for organisations wanting to demonstrate their commitment as a responsible employer, living wage accreditation is the best place to start. By paying the real living wage, employers are voluntarily taking a stand to ensure that their employees can earn a wage which is enough to live on. That basic fairness is at the heart of what the real living wage campaign is about, and why great businesses and great organisations choose to go further than the government minimum. Earning the real living wage as opposed to the government's minimum makes a huge difference to workers. Workers have told the Real Living Wage Foundation the difference it makes to their productivity at work, mental health, relationships with family and more. The Real Living Wage has lifted hundreds of thousands of families onto a wage that covers their everyday needs. And then there's further down, there's personal stories. I can send the link round if you want to have a bit more of a look. But I find the fact they want to kick the can down the road, push the responsibility to ensure that council staff are being given wages that they can live on, is absolutely disgusting. But I will say, as we discuss in debate in this chamber the budget before us, in Westminster today, Parliament has been debating the country's budget. And that, Lord Mayor, is where the situation we are in with our discussion stems from. Hundreds of millions taken out of our council. And I'd say before I get on to some of the things the Lib Dems have been saying, Councillor Stone has been a councillor for a week longer than I've been alive. My commiserations to anybody who's had to sit through all 25 of those budget contributions. Because my lifetime feels like a long time. If you had to sit through all of them, oh, God help you. And I have said I've found what has been said by the Lib Dems quite strange. Because where we start, where were the Lib Dems when the coalition started slashing the budgets that we've carried on to this day, in lockstep with the Tories? And funny enough, Lord Mayor, Nick Clegg has gone from being David Cameron's lackey to Mark Zuckerberg's, and I don't know whether that's an upgrade or a downgrade or a bit of a sideways move. And the Lib Dems started this, and how councils are picking up the pieces across the country. And just to indulge myself for a moment, Councillor Huddart came up to me and said, asked me whether I'd just gotten a new job with the suit I was wearing, and it's not because I've got a new job, it's because I won't be seeking re-election in May due to moving out of the area. And I'd just like to say it's been the greatest honour to be a Newcastle City Councillor and represent the people of South Jedburgh and Sandyford. I'd like to take this opportunity to thank the residents for the ward that I'm so proud to represent, for their support, friendship and the trust that they placed in me in 2021. I'd like to thank the former leader of the council for allowing me to serve our city as an assistant cabinet member. I would like to say this is the greatest city on earth, and it should be noted it has the greatest football team on earth as well. I think a lot's been said tonight, and there's a lot of back and forth and knocking of horns and so on. But I think for me, a lot of my time in this council has been filled with lots of friendship. Obviously from my own side, from my very good friends, Councillor Dan Greenoff and Councillor Alex Hay, our former colleagues, Councillor Annie Durant and former Councillor Simon Barnes, and obviously my ward colleagues, Councillor Leslie Story and Councillor Laura Cummins, for their support, their friendship and their kindness. But I'd also like to say, as we take this opportunity and probably have a bit of a barney, bit of a go at each other, thank members on the opposite side for their support and their friendship. To thank Councillor Karen Robson, who was at the time Lord Mayor, for her support in my role as Armed Forces Champion, as well as Robin Ashby in those endeavours. And also to Councillor Woodcock for his, who was at the time whip for the Lib Dem group, for his unique sense of humour that has gotten us through many a challenging discussion. But I'd like to say, I think that even when we're having these discussions, a bit of brevity and a bit of friendship doesn't go amiss. And I'd like to finish on 2 points. When I was elected in 2021, I was the youngest councillor on the authority at that point. I'm still the youngest councillor at the age of 25. I think we need to all recommit ourselves to do more to bring young people in to the work of this council and to what we do. And I'll finish by saying a massive thank you to the officers of this council. They have been responding and dealing with queries and questions all day, and I think when we talk about some of the issues in this budget, we need to show them more respect for the difficult decisions they have to make in order to serve the residents of this city. Because you said, something said before that I think sort of narked me in the sense of saying around making sure that we're getting, budgets in line rather than sort of the wider principles, but where the budgets have to be set. And that is the reality we're in. But the council officers put so much work and so much time into ensuring that we can make the best possible decisions possible that we can. So I think we do need to show a bit more respect for their hard work. I don't know what I'm going to say to finish other than away the tune.
Thank you, Councillor Gray. Councillor Lovett.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. Let us not forget budgets are about priorities and choices. Labour have proposed theirs choices and we proposed ours. Councillor Mains, I know I am a reliability and maintenance consultant, and I know that by implementing motion sensing lighting you can save lots of money. The staff don't need to turn the lights off, they turn themselves off. So by implementing something like that, you could save a fortune. Council, do you know how many caddies end up in the back of a bin truck or get damaged in the process of collection? I had to pick one up from the middle of my street last Monday after it was left in the road following a collection. Residents didn't put it there. I've had a number replaced for residents through damage or loss during the collection process. You would be very surprised how many residents don't actually have a caddy because it's ended up in the back of a bin truck. I'd like to talk a bit about projects that are ongoing and might be delayed. The right turn onto Salters Road, Gosforth High Street, has been closed for long enough. Residents of Headley Farm are having to deal with the volume of traffic, including HGVs, through trying to find a right turn off Great North Road on a daily basis. Just today, a resident stopped me. Their car was hit whilst it was parked in Regent Road North. Please, can we have an urgent review? For 7 years, passengers who use the number 35 bus on Gosforth High Street have had to stand in the rain and wind. The bus companies say the council's dilly-dallying about what to do about the bus stops. I've had to email the place director asking for a temporary bus shelter just this week when our passengers going to see some progress.
Point of order.
Yes, it is a point of order.
Okay.
I understand that the councillor speaking tends to use this forum to carry out his casework. This is a budget debate. I would ask with respect. Outrageous. No, it's not outrageous. It is. What it is. You know it is.
Could you confine your remarks to the subject at hand?
Okay. So, project delays don't just cost money, they have a massive impact on residents and the general public. Can we have some assurances that delays won't continue, not just for projects, but for many projects which are in the pipeline across the city? And what is the council going to do to ensure pipeline projects are not cancelled and they are prioritised and implemented? I support the amendments. Thank you, Lord Mayor. Sorry you put me off there.
Sorry about that. Thank you, Councillor Lovett. Now, I am on my supplemental list of speakers. All those who were on my original list have spoken. Can I remind you, and don't stick your hand up if you've already spoken, does anyone else want to speak on the budget report? I've got you down, Councillor Lambert. Anybody else? No? Okay, I've got 2 reserved speakers as well. The seconders reserve the right to speak. Councillor Lambert?
Colleagues, as
Is this thing working, is it?
Yeah.
Right. I'm not going to speak regarding these amendments, which quite frankly are somewhat flaky and superficial. I just want to sort of address a number of issues which colleagues from both sides of the chamber have raised, and that's to do with alleviating hardship and poverty and inequality in our city. As both Alex Hay and Paula have quite rightly argued and pointed out, we are firmly committed to safeguarding the Welfare Rights Service. Christine rightly pointed out in her speech that alleviating poverty, lifting people out of poverty is a priority. And Peter went on to argue budgets are a question of priorities. I just wish to localise this debate somewhat and focus very much on the Kenton Welfare Rights Service, which is solely funded by the Kenton Ward Committee. I have to say to you, colleagues, this will come as a great surprise, as it did to me when I started to do a bit of digging, as you do, and found out that the Lib Dems slashed the budget, of this essential service,
you, I've got the point.
which is benefiting both Fordham residents and Gosforth.
Could you hold on a second?
Oh, right.
You're raising a matter specifically to to Kenton.
This is this is any three. Gosforth,
If you're
Gosforth
raising an
and Kenton.
issue that's generally about the budget, could you make that point?
Right. All I'm going to say is it's serving a huge swathe of people in any three, and I'm calling on my Lib Dem colleagues from those three wards to make a contribution so we can be genuine in our commitments to rectify and address issues to do with hardship, financial insecurity. I was just trying to localise the budget debate to the NE3 area. Thank you, colleagues.
Thank you very much, Councillor Lambert.
Lord Mayor, can I make a point of personal clarification, please, to Councillor Lambert? Would really like to clarify whether he believes that if it's so important to the Labour...
Could you use a microphone, please? I can't hear you.
Could Councillor Lambert please clarify in the point that he's making, if the Welfare Rights Service is so important, why has his Labour group not mainstreamed it into the budget instead of forcing it onto ward budgets?
Would you like to answer the question, please, Councillor Lambert, briefly?
Well, clearly not the Cabinet member for this particular position. But as Alex Hay has rightly pointed out, we are safeguarding this service. It has generated over £22 million in unclaimed benefits. My argument is very simple, right? The ward budgets, council committees in the wards, right, make a contribution. It's a localised neighbourhood service, and all I'm asking is for you guys to put your hands in your pockets into your ward budgets and make a contribution. I have the figures. Hundreds of residents are benefiting from this service as they are here. That's my central point. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Lambert. Two people have reserved their right to reply. Councillor Kemp and then Councillor Hall. Councillor Kemp. Oh, beg your pardon. It's the amendments first. I do beg your pardon. It's Councillor Hall first. Councillor Hall.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. The budget presented today is a competent one. Every year I have had issues with some of the choices made, but never in the competency of the balancing of the books. And yet again, a massive thank you to Mark Nicholson and the team for all their efforts, as always. What this budget reflects is a common refrain. Local government is in crisis. Our ageing population is causing spiralling demand for social care, whilst for decades and across numerous governments, the funding from central government has not fairly met the demands placed on councils. Cuts have been required, and they have invariably fallen on the so-called non-essential activities, also known as the unique priorities and desires of each local area. We, the Liberal Democrats, are criticised every year for the scale of our amendments, But that is recognition that the vast majority of the budget is driven by the settlement and the rules from government. We are in an era where councils must choose between debilitating cuts, risky financial planning, or bankruptcy, sometimes all three. No cure has yet arrived, but there are some bright spots. Devolution deals are giving regions access to better funding and greater powers, and I very much hope that the opportunity presented by the North East Mayoralty can be a transformative spark for the city and the region. Maximising opportunity. Here we come to the crux of the issue. The opportunity of devolution for the North East is not new. We had this opportunity 6 years ago, only for it to be squandered through political infighting. Likewise, Newcastle City Council is not maximising opportunity. Councillor Lambert himself has just demonstrated that, showing something that has generated a lot of income for the local area and yet is not directly supported by the council. Why is that? I've sat in scrutiny meetings for years watching the commercial property portfolio lose money again and again. A review was promised in 2018, and yet it has only truly started in the last year, and even that is not yet covering the critical office portfolio in condition. The council is being outcompeted for the best offices and isn't yet investing in disposing of or repurposing the low-grade stock. Every year, the council is starting the budget with a multi-million-pound loss to cover. For a decade, the council's primary mechanism for increasing income has been growing the council tax and business rate base through new properties. Not a bad plan fundamentally, but in executing this plan, the council has not maximised the opportunity for local communities. The Great Park, for example, has become a council tax farm, with public realm managed by the developer, not the council, a near complete lack of local services, and poor public transport links. Connectivity is so poor that the council is spending $800,000 to convert the park and ride into a school car park. People living in the Great Park have to drive to sensibly access work and essential services, massively contributing to the traffic issues on the A1 in Gosforth and on the Central Motorway. The council has declared a climate emergency, prompted by the opposition, yet the council is happy to let the Great Park exist as a heavily car-reliant community with poor public transport links and inadequate active travel routes. People are fed up. The accelerated development zone for the city centre, another great financial opportunity, has blinkered the council to its opportunities in the rest of the city. High streets in Gosforth, Fordham, Byker, Fenham, Walker and so many others feel completely neglected, and yet, with investment and support, they present the opportunity to transform Newcastle into a true 15-minute city. Motivated landlords, like the new owners of Gosforth Centre, show what is possible with passion, organisation and a little investment. And the opportunities are even outlined in the council's own inclusive economy strategy. Yet the council, as a landlord, is unsustainably hiking rents for small businesses, and its centrally skewed investments drastically undermine these opportunities. People feel left behind, and people are fed up. To our amendments, I'm conscious of time. I ask Labour, who will not get their real living wage under our proposals? Or is it you who is blustering about conscience? Lest we forget, it was the Liberal Democrats in government who started the upward drive in minimum wage after years of neglect by Labour. We propose a budget technicality to secure the opportunity for 1,000 local residents a year. Let me repeat that, 1,000 local residents a year to access crisis support. Who can be against that? The North East Mayoralty presents the opportunity to rationalise economic development spending, preventing the need for cuts to SEN transport. Someone slipped a few minutes ago because they admitted that the vast majority of the festival costs that you were complaining about come from the combined authority already. This is not removing Newcastle's identity, it's about avoiding duplication. To conclude, Lord Mayor, it is very likely we will have a Labour government by the end of the year. You have to really mess it up now to stop that. But what you will say, what will you say to people on the doorstep in the likely scenario that Keir can't find the money, motivation or inspiration to fix local government funding? It's not going to fly saying, oh, the government isn't giving us any money when it's your government. What we will say won't change a jot. The government isn't giving us enough money and the council isn't making the most of its opportunities. Take the opportunity. or face history repeating itself when we take the opportunity from you.
Thank you, Councillor Hall. It's your turn now, Councillor Kempen. I do apologise. My mistake.
It's quite all right, Lord Mayor. I thought you were apologising.
And to be followed by Councillor Frew for his right of reply.
I thought you were apologising for some of the contributions, but that's not your responsibility. So thank you, Lord Mayor. I second this budget and medium-term plan, and in doing so I want to place on record my thanks to the people of Newcastle for their input, to the officers of the council and my friend Councillor Frew for leading this process. Local government finances in an existential crisis. The model simply doesn't work, yet we have a Tory government continuing to underfund, point blame and accuse the sector of financial mismanagement, even this week advising councils in a jaw-dropping demonstration of how detached this government is that they advise getting rid of diversity officers. This at a time when we're all striving to ensure our organisations represent the communities that we represent. The emergency £600 million funding for all councils in January, whilst welcome, was a drop, and clearly a cynical, short-term and economically illiterate way of ministers minimising the prospects of further town hall insolvencies before the general election, not a solution to the wider crisis. The budget presented today is a result of consultation our communities listened to and informing the decisions we've taken. Let's be under no illusions, this has been a huge challenge, but through prudent financial management, a clear political agenda and a commitment to protect those most vulnerable in society, yes, Councillor Stone, we have done this. We've heard from the Leader of the Opposition, a polished speech as ever, but what a shame that the budget amendments are not. He referred to genuine transformation reforms, but provided no suggestions. If we'd followed the previous budget proposals of the opposition, we'd have spent all of our reserves. Great financial management. So what are these amendments? Hand-wringing, political posturing, short-term, obfuscation. Councillor Frew and colleagues have referenced many things that we were doing to improve the livelihoods of our residents, our inclusive economic strategy, the anti-poverty strategy, our fresh approach to recruiting across the city and bringing housing back into the council to ensure a strategic approach to housing services and delivery, all actions with our residents at heart. Councillor Taylor made a little snidey comment about we were forced into a decision. No, Councillor Taylor, it's political leadership and decision. Don't laugh. That's just rude. We've got a Joe Cox motion, you know. It was a decision taken by myself and the Deputy Leader in Cabinet because we believe in actually seeking opportunities where there are, not simply bleating shared services with no thought about what it means. So the opposition proposed amendments are just tinkering at the edges, nothing more, no strategic thinking, rather a short series of, they hope, headline-grabbing suggestions. So let me pick on three. The opposition proposed a review to the homelessness service, or as it should be termed, temporary accommodation services. This is frankly the weakest form of leadership and an indication of a group clearly not capable of running complex organisations. Who can credibly say a service doesn't require review? When you say it out aloud, you realise how ludicrous that sounds. I can think of no... Greg, please be quiet. I can think of no business or organisation that would ever think of any aspect of business that never needs reviewing or could be reviewed or adapted. Our commissioned service providers themselves recognise the role of a review. And now we move to the absolute corker of the Liberal Democrats' politics, the real living wage. They say they are committed to this, just not yet. They say our staff are the greatest asset we have, just not quite now. We as the Labour administration are committed to becoming a real living wage city. This requires leadership and a commitment from us, not phase but now. Helping those we employ who carry out some of the most demanding roles and lifting their pay. I'm proud of this. It's how we should be judged, how we treat people. And of course there is the little detail of the criteria of the real living wage, but let's not allow that to deter them from a headline in a focused newsletter. Finally, the proposal about economic development, or should we say in this case, the proposal of economic literacy. Yes, the combined authority is a real achievement, an opportunity for the region, and I'm proud to have been at the heart of the negotiations to ensure Newcastle gets the best opportunity for this from our residents. But it's not the silver bullet, and it's certainly, Councillor Morrissey, not the role of combined authority funding, nor is it eligible to plug funding in local authority services. Yet again, the opposition offer no strategic thinking, just a budget line for political gain. Cutting funding would remove any focused activity to drive companies, capital investors and visitors to the city, in turn limiting opportunity to support the creation of large numbers of skilled jobs, something key to our inclusive economic strategy and anti-poverty strategy. This economic development activity helps the city profile itself on a national and international scale. Newcastle has recently been voted for the second year running as #1 in Europe's mid-sized cities for inward investment strategy. But it seems the opposition don't want success or for us to be competitive as a city. Through the funding that this budget amendment proposes to cut, in 2022 this helped to secure £80 million worth of investment, support the creation and safeguarding of over 1,350 jobs, and assisted 33 new companies to land in this city, creating well-needed employment. And then we look at the idea of Elgin Square, at the heart of our city, employing over 2,000 people, many of them our local residents. Our investment is about securing sustainable employment for our people. That's our commitment as a Labour administration. I suggest that's an excellent return on investment and prudent financial management. Lord Mayor and City Council, I reject all of the ludicrous amendments in full and second the budget and MTFP as set out in the report.
Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Kent. Councillor Frew, you have your right of reply. Pardon? No? Go on.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. What we've heard from the opposition has been criticism without solutions. We've heard that there are things that should be reviewed that are not the specific proposals in the budget. But we don't know what those are. We haven't had any alternatives, any inkling or thought as to what needs to be reviewed. So clearly, the Liberals need to sit down and have a bit more of a think about what they're trying to achieve. The Lib Dems have said nothing about years 2 and 3 when their proposals are only 1 year funded and are knocking back decisions because they don't want to make permanent cuts, because they're unwilling to take on the challenge of actual financial management. If their amendments went through, we would need millions more in year 2 and millions more in year 3, which are already extremely difficult. We need to find £23 million next year. Why do the Liberal Democrats seem so insistent to keep stacking that number up? Because it's not going to be sustainable, and we're not going to find that sort of cash. And more so, I find it quite frustrating that Councillor Ferguson has repeatedly said about us not having a 3-year balanced MTFP, when it's shifting the goalposts now by reprofiling money into next year in the same way that the Chancellor keeps doing. The one who's actually desperate for Keir Starmer is Councillor Ferguson. He's the one that needs Keir Starmer to come in on a shining white horse. However, I know that the Labour Party are responsible with finances not just in Newcastle but in Westminster. I know that they're going to have difficult choices when we win the next general election, and that it's not going to be turning on the taps moment. There's going to have to be time to undo the absolute shoddy mess that the Tories have made of government over the past 14 years, and that's not going to instantly come and save our bacon. I find the comments about the lights being on but nobody home quite frustrating. Councillor Ferguson may have left the building, but there are still going to be cleaners, security and estates in the building. Maybe he's forgotten them because he doesn't want to pay them properly either. And these comments about Section 106 money is just childish. The Section 106 money can't just be spent on anything. It's not just a pile of money lying around. And if it is a pile of money lying around, why have the opposition not put forward an amendment to make use of it? They couldn't even put forward an amendment for the workplace parking levy. They couldn't find the £1 million that they'd need to even start doing that. And we didn't have that 5 years ago. And really, it's really silly to keep talking about proposal where only one local authority in England has done it, and nobody else has expressed any interest because it probably doesn't work. But I want to say what's good, what's great in Newcastle, what are our successes and achievements. A groundbreaking inclusive economic strategy which aims to build a resilient local economy, drive productivity and standards, not just in high-paid sectors, but also in the foundational economy. An anti-poverty strategy to address the shocking rise of poverty in our region, driven by cuts from central government. Local spend, 65% of the council spend is through northeast suppliers. Commercially competitive services, winning contracts for school meals provision and IT, not just in Newcastle but further afield as well. Recruitment roadshows, bringing opportunities to people in their communities, and a national pilot for local government recruitment campaign. An ongoing programme of refreshing the council website, outstanding collection rates for council tax and business rates, one of the most generous council tax reduction schemes in the country. Of nearly 300 local authorities, council tax in Newcastle is the 13th lowest charge. The 13th lowest charge. If Councillor Stone doesn't think that's value for money, I'd love to see him say how we can put it down less. Gold Award bereavement services. 3,285 early interventions for families through social services for children. The Every programme, listening to and delivering for young people. What's needed most, I can agree with the opposition, is a change in government. We need a change in these rotten Tories who don't care about Newcastle. We need a general election now, in May. We're ready. Bring it on.
Thank you, Councillor Frew. We're going to move on to a named vote on each of the amendments in turn. And this is required because... Can you use the microphone?
Yep, thank you. Lord Mayor, I'm having to declare an interest on this particular debate, as aspect of the budget does affect the charity that I work for, and the advice from legal is that I withdraw from the vote. Before I do leave the chamber, Lord Mayor, can I thank you for the well wishes. Ramadan indeed is from next week. I wish everybody Ramadan Kareem. I do have a choice to fast. However, millions of Palestinians don't have the choice. They will be suffering. And I urge political leaders to do the right thing and call for an immediate ceasefire. Thank you, Lord Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Rahman. As I was saying, we're going to move to a named vote on each of the amendments. Now, that will be done by go vote, which you've all had instructions about. And if you are unable to use go vote, then I will need to call on you to give your vote verbally, and you will need to state your name and give the way you wish to vote. So I will call first Amendment 1. Those in favour? Amendment 1. Is that because you can't vote? Okay. Would you like to state your name and how you wish to vote? Councillor Huddart. Right. Well, that's lost. No, sorry, did I have another hand there? Councillor Morrissey? Right. You need to state your name and please. Is there anyone on that side? Councillor? Pardon? Vote against? Right. Councillor Wood? Right. Thank you. Yes, I'm just looking. Councillor Steve Wood. Councillor Mafembe? Against. Right, that amendment is lost. So we'll move on now to Amendment 2. The vote on Amendment 2. Could you use your go vote again? Anyone who can't use go vote? Councillor Wood? Right. Councillor Mafembe? Was that another hand up there? Councillor David Wood? Right. Any more hands up? Councillor Huddart? I can't... Have you changed your vote, Councillor Hall? Sorry, I've no idea what you're saying.
The app's not working, unsurprisingly.
Right. So your vote is in favour of Amendment 2. Are there any other hands on that side? No? Okay. Well, that amendment is lost as well. So we'll move on to Amendment 3. Votes on Amendment 3, please. What's that? Is that a point of order? I have got no idea what you're saying. Could you use the microphone? Take it off. Take it all off. Amendment 3. Councillor Hall, have you voted? Are you voting in favour? Yes. Councillor Huddart? Yes. Vote in favour. Hands on the other side. Councillor Steve Wood? Right. Councillor Mafembe? Thank you. Councillor David Wood? Against? Right, so that amendment is lost. Now then, Amendment 4 falls because of voting on Amendment 2 or 3, and they were both lost. So Amendment 4 falls. So we're now voting on Amendment 5. So if you could use your go vote to indicate, please. Could I have hands up for those who haven't been able to vote? I'll come to this side next. Councillor Steve Wood? Right. Councillor Mafembe? Councillor David Wood? Against? Did I see hands at this side? Councillor Huddart? Right. Councillor Hall? Right. Any more on this side? No. Right. That amendment is lost as well. So all of the amendments have been lost. So Council has to vote on the original recommendations from Councillor Frew. All those in favour, please show. Or please use your go vote. Are there any more that I need to add in? Councillor Mafembe? Yes, okay. And Councillor Steve Wood? You haven't been able to amend it on the system? Okay, Councillor. Councillor Byrne? It's not showing. Okay, fine. I've thought I'd done yours, Councillor Wood. On this side, who else is there? Councillor Hall? Against. And Councillor Huddart against. That means that the original recommendation is carried. So we'll move on to agenda item 8, which is the council plan. And I will beg pardon, I've no idea what you said. Is that seconded? So it's seconded. So the guillotine's been moved that we suspend the guillotine. Could we have the voting cancelled, please? Thank you. All those in favour of that motion, please show. Anyone who hasn't been able to vote? Councillor Hall? Pardon? Right. Councillor Mafembe? Right. Councillor David Wood? Right. Councillor Stephen Wood? Against. Right. So that is lost. So we'll move on to agenda item 8, the council plan. And I will call on Councillor Kilgour to move the report and Councillor Kemp to second the report. Councillor Kilgour.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. I'm pleased to bring the council plan to council for approval tonight. As members will know, the council plan is a strategic document setting out our ambitions for our city over the next 3 years and the ways we will strive to achieve them. The plan's structure and themes were previously published in November 2023 Cabinet papers, with the document itself being agreed at Cabinet on the 19th of February, so should be familiar to members already. When working on this plan, council officers, who I thank for their hard work, the Leader of Council and I looked at examples of similar documents from other local authorities, learning from what was good practice and using that to inform our own approach. Members will note that this iteration of the council plan differs to past versions in that it is shorter, more focused and more strategic. Previously, the council plan contained a great deal of detail since it was the main document covering both council delivery as well as strategy. This plan, however, sits at the centre of council activity, both directing and being informed by our key strategies, including the Inclusive Economic Strategy, Anti-Poverty Strategy, our medium-term financial plan, and our forthcoming council delivery plan, housing strategy, movement strategy and local plan, as well as individual directorate delivery plans which guide our everyday activity. It is the foundation for the council's entire delivery framework, identifying our 3 overarching priorities of inclusive economy, tackling poverty and net zero, our 3 interconnected action areas of service delivery of ambition, starting well, living well, ageing well, our communities and our infrastructure, the 4 key principles for working, which are resident-focused, sustainable and well-governed, evidence-led and data-driven, and equitable, diverse and inclusive, and our 3 underpinning organisational values of fair, proud and ambitious. It provides the highest level steer for the organisation and for partners working with us on where to focus our resources and attention. The golden thread started in this plan should be evident through our entire delivery framework. Addressing the structural challenges that the Council operates within will need a great deal of time and activity. The impacts of our multi-layered, complex services are often affected by elements outside of the Council's control, and the plan describes our approach to delivery and measuring our performance in this context. The plan does not detail service-specific partnerships or strategic documents. This information is contained within the wider delivery framework referenced in the plan. We intend that the plan should be used by Council staff to guide planning, design, delivery, reporting and evaluation activity. It is also designed to be accessible and meaningful to city stakeholders who we work with in increasing levels of partnership and cooperation for the sustainable and long-term benefit of our residents. We intend that the Council plan will be reviewed and refreshed on an annual basis. I note, Lord Mayor, that Councillors Ferguson and Campion, who attended Cabinet in February, had no questions or comments about the plan, so can only assume that they're happy to approve it tonight. I'll leave it there, Lord Mayor, and since the report is for debate rather than questions, I look forward to hearing members' contributions. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Kilgour. Councillor Kemp? Are you seconding? Reserved. Right, I'm writing it down this time. Councillor Ferguson?
Thank you, Lord Mayor. I was really looking forward in advance to seeing how my arguments are going to be deliberately misrepresented in this debate, since it's the only way that anyone opposite appears to have been able to muster a response to our amendments in the last one. I did think that because we were going to have a spectacularly truncated debate at Labour's choice on this particular item that I might lose the chance, but we've had one. Councillor Kilgour, I'm sure, will remember that at the Cabinet meeting, my statement was the same as the statement about the budget, that by custom and practice, when we know an item is getting referred to the Council chamber, we will reserve our comments for here. I must, up front, acknowledge that it is a good thing, in principle, that a Council plan has been brought to the chamber this evening. I have argued since I first entered the chamber that this Council needs a proper strategy, a compelling vision and a clear performance management framework to see it delivered. Partial progress ain't bad. No one reasonable would argue against an inclusive economy, a meaningful reduction in poverty, particularly child poverty, and the target of achieving net zero by 2030. But do they all have a place in a Council plan when we would have to acknowledge that the scope for delivering at least the first two sit out with the Council itself? We have to acknowledge that the likelihood of the sort of fundamental change we need for Newcastle being delivered by Westminster anytime soon is unlikely under Rishi or Keir. We're all hoping for a victory for Lib Dem mayoral candidate Aidan King to maximise the potential of the North East Mayoral Combined Authority. But what if it doesn't happen? If national and regional government don't deliver their considerably sizable end of the bargain, does this mean the plan is unachievable? If so, what accountability does it deliver for the Labour administration so that residents can know they're delivering what they say they're going to do, let alone what residents want them to deliver? We believe the Council has a duty to provide leadership of place, empowerment of communities and stewardship of our environment. These aims should be underpinned by objectives that are measurable, deliverable in defined timescales and achievable by the Council. They should be supported by a robust performance management framework. This was the subject of my maiden speech in this chamber, but in that time we have gone backwards, now having no performance dashboard since June 2022. This Council plan should be about accountability, not just aspirations. It should be about deliverability, demonstrable progress. Instead, I fear that if we proceed with this plan, and it stays around longer than the last one, we will ask in 5 years, did the Council do it? Was the plan delivered as expected? And the answer will be...
Thank you very much, Councillor Ferguson. Councillor Stone.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. I'll try and be brief. I know we're getting on in time now, but I think it is important that we have a debate on the council plan. It is something that has been raised on a number of occasions in the Audit Committee, in which it was stressed that the members of the Audit Committee and the then chair of the Audit Committee felt that there was an important corporate governance issue here, and that the council needs to know and needs to have a clear strategy in place and a clear plan in place to know how best to allocate its resources. And it is very difficult to audit what the council is doing if there are no targets and no objectives set out clearly. And it's taken a very long time for us to get from the glorious days of the new administration's coronation and the LGA peer review that went on into the council, and they identified the need for a council plan. It has taken us a long time to get there, and there was considerable impatience on the part of a number of stakeholders about the lack of that being in place. It was an assurance that was given by senior officers to make sure this happened. And we have finally got there. We have got a very nice, glossy, very well illustrated, very well laid out document, which has got some wonderful graphic design and some lovely pictures, but as Councillor Ferguson has mentioned, doesn't have a lot in the way of targets, and it is very difficult to know quite whether the council will have achieved its council plan because there is a lack of targets within that. I've made the point in previous debates in this council about corporate governance that we need to have, in addition to the council plan, we need to have some clarity on the council's transformation plan and its resource allocation strategy. We've had the budget tonight, but we need to see how it's going to combine these elements to actually make these things happen, because fine words are lovely, nice pictures are lovely, good design is lovely, but it's about progress and about making a difference for the people of the city, and I'm not sure this council plan is going to do that. Thank you, Lord Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Stone. The guillotine has fallen, so I'm going to call one further speaker on this item. Then Councillor Kemp, who's reserved his right of reply, and then Councillor Kilgour has her right of reply. Beg your pardon. Councillor Kemp reserved his right to speak. So one further speaker would be Councillor Kane.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. I'd like to talk, surprise, surprise, about the net zero section. Although before that, in the statistics, nice graphical statistics bit, it says that Newcastle's carbon emissions have been cut by 42% since 2005. Now, at first glance, that might seem impressive, but does anybody know what the national figure for carbon reductions is since 2005? 43%. Now, I'm not going to quibble over 1%, but I think we have to realise that that statistic is average. So if net zero really is a priority for the Council, we're going to have to raise our ambition on the actions. Most of them seem a bit anodyne, and I fear we will remain average. One other thing I would pick out is the statement on waste. In November 2019, this Council voted for a zero waste policy. That policy has failed to appear in any official document of this Council ever since. We voted for it. Where is it? Thank you, Lord Mayor.
Thank you very much, Councillor Kane. Councillor Kemp, you reserved your right to speak. Carry on.
Just about retain the will to live.
Lord
Mayor, so firstly, I think just for accuracy, this is of course a refresh of the council plan, as despite comments made by members of the opposition about a lack of a plan, there has been one in place continuously. I think, just to clarify a few observations and pointers that we are informed of by Councillor Ferguson and Councillor Stone, I think a practical understanding about what the purpose of the council plan is, which was very clearly outlined by Councillor Kilgour in her introduction. So, the centre of the council activity, this plan both directs and is informed by our key strategies, our medium-term financial plan, our forthcoming council delivery plan, and our everyday activity. And that is where the measurements will be. That is where outcomes and outputs are measured. So actually, there is a clear, direct route for actual transparency of delivery of our services. Equally, the plan does not detail service-specific partnerships or strategic documents, and this is contained within the wider delivery framework referenced in the plan. So if people read the plan rather than commented, admittedly on the very attractive imagery that's included, then they would be able to actually make a more informed comment rather than the usual glib, scattering remarks that are just dismissive and actually fail to address the role of a council plan. The council plan, this sits as the foundations for all of our activity. The strategies exist around it, the delivery plans around that. It's embedded and it's core to everything we do. And I think equally what we need to remember is that the council plan plays two roles. It's used internally by the council staff to guide planning, design and delivery, reporting and evaluation. So again, there's the checks and balances. And externally for our key stakeholders to help shape cooperation on achieving sustainable and long-term outcomes. I think this is a very credible document. I think it's fit for purpose. We've done peer reviews in conversations with colleagues across the country, very reflective on those, but this is about place, this is about Newcastle. I commend the plan. As Councillor Kilgour has said, this was for a discussion and debate and comments, but it seems that the opposition simply just want to pick at things. I commend the report. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Kemp. Councillor Kilgour, you have the right of reply.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. Colin, I'll not repeat what I've already said, partly because Nick's already said it. But I did say that it was the highest level steer for the organisation. This is about that strategic level. This is not about that performance management level that you're asking for. That comes in the delivery plan, as I said, if you'd listened. This council plan is for our whole city and it covers our service delivery. But as I said earlier, again, Councillor Ferguson, achieving our ambitions requires strong partnership working and collaboration. Success depends on our people and organisations coming together so their collective knowledge, skills, effort and passion is harnessed. We must continue to put residents at the heart of everything we do, which this plan does. By listening, learning and responding and recognising the strengths of individuals, communities and collaboration, we will achieve those ambitions. I'm proud of this plan and I recommend the report to Council, Lord Mayor.
Thank you very much, Councillor Kilgour. There are no amendments to the council plan. So does council agree to the recommendations in the council plan? Do we need a vote? Yes? Is that yes? I don't hear anybody speaking to me. Thank you. Could we have the go vote up, please? Or do we need just hands up? Just hands. If you could put your hand up if you agree to the recommendations. Oh, they're up now. Use your go vote. Is there anyone? Oh, sorry, they're not stopped yet. Is there anybody who hasn't been able to vote? Councillor Huddart? Against? Councillor Morrissey? I think that's Councillor Hall. Against? Hands up. Councillor Rahman? 4? Sorry, Councillor Stone? Right, fine. Thank you. Right, on this side, Councillor David Wood? Right. Councillor Mafembe? Yes. Councillor Stephen Wood? Yes. Thank you. Any more? For any more? No? Right. That means the report is carried. Thank you very much. And we're now, in accordance with Standing Order 19, going to deal with the rest of the items of business.
Lord Mayor, as in the Standing Orders section 10G, it says, so far as it is reasonably practicable, no more than one Cabinet member's annual report will be submitted to each ordinary council meeting. Now, even setting aside the definition of ordinary, we've had two Cabinet members' reports submitted to this meeting. We had no Cabinet member report in June or December. And we also have the council plan. It feels like the Cabinet is fundamentally failing to take heed of the recommendation in the standing orders, the very strong recommendation in the standing orders. Could I humbly suggest that the Cabinet be kept on a shorter leash when it comes to this?
Well,
thank you, Lord Mayor.
Unfortunately, I don't control the agenda, so I will, that comment is noted. Councillor Frew, is that also a point of order?
I just want to clarify what has been said. There is only 2 reports to this meeting because one was delayed from earlier in the year. That was quite a reasonable delay.
Sorry. Can you sit down, please, Councillor Hall? I'm going to move on to back to the agenda and deal. No, I have said. Would you take your seat again, please? Please take your seat again. This is agenda item 9. Audit and Standards Committee proposals for future arrangements. Councillor Wood, you moved it. Councillor Gray, seconded. In that case, does Council agree the recommendations? All right, we'll take a vote. All those in favour of the recommendations, you've got go vote going. Is there anyone who hasn't been able to vote? Councillor Stephen Wood? 4. Councillor Mafembe? Right. Councillor David Wood? Right. Are there any on this side? Councillor Rahman? Right. Councillor Stone? Councillor Morrissey? Right. Are there any more hands up? I can just see one waving at the front here. Could you, please, if your hand isn't up, please could you refrain from sticking it in the air? Thank you. The report is carried. So the questions by members have been circulated. Councillor Stone, I think you needed an oral reply. You'll get a written reply. So Cabinet member reports. Is Councillor Frew's report agreed? Connected Clean City report. That will be from Councillor Williams. Is that one agreed? Right, are the appointments agreed as set out in the reports circulated for the meeting? Agreed. This is agenda item 13, the support of the Joe Cox Foundation and Committee on Standards in Public Life. I think that's to be moved by Councillor Kemp. Right, seconded by Councillor Kilgour. Right, I'm pretty sure there's no, there's no amendment to this. So is the motion agreed? Right. Agenda item 14. Councillor Kane to move the motion. You'd like to defer it? Right. And then agenda item 15, holding developers to account. Councillor Walker. Pardon? You'll take it tonight. So is it seconded? Seconded by Councillor Fairley. Is the motion agreed? Right, and then agenda item 16, scrapping the 2-child benefit cap. Councillor Morrissey. You'd like to defer it, okay. Right, fine. The next meeting of the council, you'll all be delighted, will be the annual meeting of the council at 2 p.m. on Wednesday, the 22nd of May. Thank you all very much. Thank you. Thank you. Right, the meeting's ended.